I'm sorry, I haven't a clue. God help us all.
Goode Street.
Warren Street.
Euston Road.
Winkerman Terrace.
Clapham South.
What?
Oxford Circus.
Mornington Crescent.
Yeah.
We present Everyman's Guide to Mornington Crescent, a two-part examination of the popular parlour game presented by Raymond Baxter.
What you have just heard were the voices of Tim Brooke-Taylor, Willie Rushton, Graham Garden and Barry Cryer playing that extraordinary game Mornington Crescent, now the fourth most widely played parlour game, after Monopoly, Scrabble and Stump. Yet, whilst the histories and rules of those three games are common knowledge, Mornington Crescent remained shrouded in mystery, a mystery that we now hope to clear up. This week, we will examine the history and impact of the game on world culture, and next week we'll reveal exactly how it is played. Most people seem not only to know how to play Mornington Crescent, they also love it, or so it would appear from the comments I received when I went out and about with my tape recorder.
Wonderful, absolutely wonderful. It's inspirational tube.
I learnt it from my mother, who is quite an expert, really.
It's a game for clever people.
It's just a fantastic game. It really makes life bearable on this train.
Well, I think it's marvellous. I mean, I don't know what we'd do without it if we didn't have it every morning.
I used to do it solo, but found it was so much better in a group.
Well, now, of course, we get latest telex messages from London that arrive early in the morning, along with our stock quotations, so that we can pinpoint the finer points of the game.
I know my wife thoroughly enjoys it. I think it's a question of being intuitive. And women are intuitive, you know.
Мы проводим каждый вечер, играем в эту игру. И Mornington Crescent, конечно, тоже очень важный.
Well, it's one of the best games because, as you can imagine, we have a lot of time to kill down here, and it's one of the best ways to pass the time away.
But the game is not only popular with the public at large and the I'm sorry I haven't a clue teams. It has several celebrated and distinguished supporters as well. Indeed, for novelist Beryl Bainbridge, it is much more than a game.
In my case, it just comes much nearer home, because I live round the corner from the actual place. I live in Albert Street.
And she worries for its future.
I think it's getting too rigid. It's getting too understandable. That's what worries me.
How did a game which has captured the imagination of so many leading celebrities originally come into being? One of the people who has investigated its early history is Barry Cunliffe, Professor of Archaeology at Oxford University. He is now convinced that the game was brought to this country by the Romans.
But I think the real evidence comes from Fishbourne, which is this large Roman building that we excavated a few years ago down near Chichester, where they've laid out very carefully on the floor, in mosaic, a version of the game which they would use to initiate people into the arts and the skills of the game. Now, you would expect there to be a whole range of helpful scenes around the walls, and we've got little bits of the wall painting, ladies being whipped and that sort of thing. And over in one corner, for example, it's clearly an orgy scene, where I suppose those who are waiting for their turn would just sort of sit down and amuse themselves for a while.
So it seems clear that the game originated with the Romans. But what was it called at that time? Professor Cunliffe again.
They were rather careful of their sacred names, and you wouldn't actually use the name of a sacred game. You would refer to it obliquely in some way. But there's a rather bad text found on one of the forts in Hadrian's Wall, just written on a little piece of wood, and you've just got the indentations of the stylus through the wax. And it looks like Manidolium lunatus.
So the Romans played Manidolium lunatus in the 1st century AD. But what happened to the game then? Well, apart from some vague references in Domesday Book, nothing is recorded of the game until the 14th century and Geoffrey Chaucer. Dr. Graham Garden, besides being a household name in other fields, is also visiting lecturer in New Miami University. He has written a thesis on Chaucer's links with Mornington Crescent, and here is an extract from a recent symposium recorded in the university.
Scholars nowadays are generally agreed that it is unlikely that Geoffrey Chaucer ever actually played Mornington Crescent as such.
Right.
This conclusion is supported by the fact that during the latter part of the 14th century, there was no underground station at Mornington Crescent. Indeed, in Chaucer's time, the nearest one would have been at Blackfriars. However, it must be borne in mind that in, say, the year 1390, London was a good deal smaller than it is now, and therefore Blackfriars was much closer then to Mornington Crescent, had it in fact existed, which it didn't. But if Mornington Crescent was unknown to Chaucer, in much the same way it was unknown to Genghis Khan and St. Paul the Apostle, there are clues as to his knowledge of an earlier primitive form of the game itself, Canterbury. In his narrative poem, The Canterbury Tales, which incidentally throws a fascinating light on Chaucer's speech impediment, the author chronicles a pilgrimage from London to Canterbury, using exactly the same rules as a player today would employ to plot his progress from, say, Oxford Circus to Mornington Crescent. We find proof enough of this in the prologue. When that ill Tommy for little apples fall, so must man to Aldwych go, from Cannon Street on the diagonal.
So it is evident that the game was flourishing in Chaucer's time, and it soon became a game favoured by royal patronage. Indeed, Holinshed's chronicles record an historic match played by Henry VIII, Catherine Howard, his fifth wife, and Thomas Cranmer. The parts in this reconstruction are taken by Willie Rushton, Tim Brooke-Taylor, and Graham Garden.
If it pleases your Majesty to start our journey.
The Bear Garden.
Your Grace?
Holy Trinity, Aldgate.
Can't. We dissolved it.
Oh, yes, Your Majesty, I'm so sorry.
Get on with it, man.
St. Bartholomew the Great, Smithfield.
No lepers.
Perhaps His Majesty would prefer a game of stump.
I would prefer, dear Archbishop, for you to continue the game without the employment of any more poxy French openings.
Houndsditch.
What? How?
By horse.
I'm afraid, Sir Thomas.
By barge.
Horse fart, he's right. Catherine.
Ye bow of Morningtown.
As you heard, Catherine Howard won that game with a back-pass trump manoeuvre. Henry's response to her victory was swift and final. Some 70 years after Catherine's execution, we are in the midst of the greatest period of English drama and the career of its finest exponent. Shakespeare's works present many allusions to Mornington Crescent. For example, we find in Richard III, Act 3, Scene 4,
My Lord of Ely, when I was last in Holborn.
And again in Act 4, Scene 2.
High-reaching Buckingham, the Marquis Dorset, as I hear, is fled to Richmond.
Also in Henry V, the French king refers to
You Dukes of Orléans, Bourbon and of Berny, Alençon, Brabant, Bar and Burgundy.
This, of course, was a sly dig at the French version of the game invented in 1540 and called Mornington Crescent, a game they played over breakfast. But the clearest references to Mornington Crescent occur in the first folio edition of Henry V, an edition now only performed very rarely.
Once more unto the bank, dear friends, once more. And close Black Wall up with the Bridge of Red.
Red Bridge.
In Hayes there's nothing so becomes East Ham as Morden, Sheerness, and good Becontree. But when Plaistow blows in our ears, then imitate the Acton and the Ongar. St. Stephen to New Cross, summon up St. John's Wood, disguise fair Lyttelton with St. Saviour's stage. Or hang our lane and city, this confounded haze, Southfield with 7 dials and Weybridge station. Now set Blackheath and stretch the Vauxhall wide, and teach them Kensington gore, and you, good Homerton, South Mims, Cricklade, Kingsland, Forest Mere, for St. Mary's and Kew, East Cheam, and Walton on the nays, that hath not Holborn, Leicester Square, and Guys. I see on Strand like Houndsditch, Pinner, and Whip's Cross, Hainault, Upham, and St. Bart's. The game's afoot. Follow your spirit, and be not rancorous. Cry God for Hurlingham, Dingwall, and St. Pancras!
Coming closer to the present day, there is a wide variety of documentary evidence of the game's popularity and influence. For instance, Charles Horace Whittaker's 1927 book, Mornington Crescent Made Easy, sold over 100,000 copies and was translated into 15 languages. And this, despite an abridged and hopelessly inadequate chapter on the adult version of the game involving Soho Square. Also at this time, some enterprising musicians brought out a song about the game, and this was soon being sung in pubs and theatres up and down the country.
I'm Lord Mornington Crescent, I'm extremely unpleasant. I dress up in ladies' attire and leap from the closet with a cry of "How was it?" Then invariably pee in the fire. I'm Cress, in mummy's own dress. I walk up pell-mell night and day. Almost everyone knows me, since we are all there. I'm Lord Mornington Crescent, hooray, hooray. I'm Lord Mornington Crescent, and all of you isn't. I'm the last of the Bakerloo line. I've given up girls, well they say breeding tells, and it does, oh it does, so does wine. I'm Cress, a psychological mess. My ambition's to appear on page 3. I sometimes get rather cross. I'm half the woman father was. I'm Lord Mornington Crescent, that's me, that's him.
Lord Mornington Crescent was sung there by the Crescentaires on a recording made in 1929. And of course the page 3 mentioned in the song was not page 3 of The Sun. It was in fact page 3 of Hansard, which was then seeking to increase its readership in the Lords. Mornington Crescent nowadays, however, is an altogether more serious affair. There is now a small band of professional players, including the I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue teams, who give demonstrations of the game and also participate in a series of sponsored competitions. Far more prestigious than those, however, is the amateur circuit, culminating each year in the World Championships. Last year, these championships were held in Reykjavik, and as usual, Radio 3 broadcast street-by-street commentary. As you'll remember, the final was a taut contest between Egypt's Ahmed Kazir and the defending champion, Finland's Stig Snorgenborg. The commentator on this brief extract is Brian Johnston, with statistical analysis from Bill Frindle.
And good morning to our Radio 3 listeners. You join us on a bright, crisp morning in Reykjavik, and although the forecast has threatened some rain later in the day, this shouldn't interfere with the play too much here inside the hall. And now the champion is about to open the proceedings. He's leaning into the table with that fine aggressive action of his.
The Angel Islington.
The Angel Islington. That's remarkable. I don't think I ever remember the Angel being used as an opening gambit in the World Championship before. Perhaps the bearded wonder would check that for us. It certainly rocked Ahmed Kazir back on his heels. It immediately puts him in nip and cuts off his hindquarters in the sudden intersection.
Brian, the Angel has been used once before in the Karachi final of 1972. Islington High Street's been used 3 times.
Oxford Circus.
Oh, and that's a jolly fine response from Ahmed. He's using Junkin's progression, which opens the game to suburban bidding and allows him to make a lateral shift in 2.
Mortimer Street.
Oh, that's a mistake. He gives a chance to Ackers.
B Street.
And he's missed it. We have to put that down as a chance. If Ackers had said Lansdowne Road, he'd have deployed a triple Helsinki, foreclosed the circle line, and reverse looped to Mornington Crescent in 1.
And that would have been the second fastest win this season after Humphrey Lyttelton's victory in the 3rd round of the Mitsuhisonic Classic.
And now Stiggers is wiping his brow with relief.
And that's a move he's not made since the 2nd round of the 1981 finals in Tokyo.
Pentonville Road.
Oh, and he's come out with Huguenot's Gamble. What audacity.
Downing Street.
Oh, and Ackers has conceded. There's no hope for anyone who moves there.
Mornington Crescent.
And it's first blood to Stiggers. And while we wait for the players to change ends, I've just got time to thank Mrs. Williams, I think it is, yes, Mrs. Williams of Leeds, for the really delicious chocolate cake she sent us.
Right, in fact, that's the 15th cake we've received this year, and that's only 2 less than our world record of 17 cakes during the 1982 championships.
And Stig Snorgenborg went on to take the title for the 3rd year running. One person who was mentioned there, but who was not allowed to take part, is Humphrey Lyttelton, chairman of I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue, and according to many, the finest living exponent of Mornington Crescent. He feels very strongly about his exclusion from the World Championships.
I mean, it was so stupid. It wasn't the fact that I was getting a fee from the BBC and therefore lost my amateur status. It was the fact that I officiated in a game.
On the other hand, the financial rewards must be some consolation, surely.
Well, certainly you'd get a first prize on the professional circuit of something in the neighbourhood of 10,000, I don't like to talk about money, but £10,000.
As little as that?
Yes, yeah, because that's nothing to the honour of winning the World Championship.
Yes.
But you can imagine for me, I mean, I don't want to say too much about the thing. I enjoy, officiating, and I'm sorry I haven't a clue. But you can imagine it's a bit like Harvey Smith or David Broome finding himself condemned to judging donkey races on Blackpool Beach when you've taken part in the highest form of the game.
But even if Humphrey were allowed to compete in the World Championships, for how much longer could he expect to do well? Mornington Crescent, like other sports and games, is becoming a young person's activity. This was amply demonstrated in a recent edition of Top of the Form, which included a round on the game. The teams were from King Henry VIII School, Abergavenny, and Queen Elizabeth Boys School, Barnet, and the question masters, as usual, were Paddy Feeney and Tim Gudgeon.
John, when playing Crabbett's rule, what must follow King's Cross?
Baker's Road?
It's right, yes, because of the diagonals, of course.
On to the other John Slattery, who famously said that she was not amused when she lost at Mornington Crescent. I'll have to hurry you on this one, John.
Queen Victoria?
Queen Victoria is correct. Well done. Do you know, in fact, who she lost to? Can you remember that? No, it doesn't matter. She was beaten by Disraeli. You still get your 2 marks. Good.
Right, Christopher, who delayed starting a battle in order to complete a game of Mornington Crescent?
Was it Sir Francis Drake?
No, that was Bowles. So it's across to John for a bonus.
John Slattery?
The Duke of Wellington?
The Duke of Wellington is absolutely right, and a bonus mark there too, John. Yes, of course, it was before the Battle of Aix-la-Chapelle. Actually, it was only a skirmish because Napoleon got tired of waiting and he marched on to Waterloo, as you know. Now we go on to Jonathan Allen. Back to the game itself now, Jonathan. Playing buttons opening and without passing water, what is the shortest route from the Holloway Road to Mornington Crescent under curfew conditions?
Holloway Road, Mile End Road, the Tower of London, and Mornington Crescent.
And absolutely no doubt about that one whatsoever. My goodness, Tim, they really know what they're talking about, don't they?
Good answers coming.
An extract from one of this year's Top of the Form quarter-finals. But Mornington Crescent has become, for some, a serious danger. The danger of addiction. What is more, as far as agony aunt Claire Rayner is concerned, the problem of this addiction to the game is on the increase.
I'm getting more and more letters every week.
Indeed she is. One of these letters was from a London taxi driver.
He decided that he could only cope if he went to destinations along routes allowed by Crabbett's rule. Now, this used to mean that he took about 6 hours to get from Heathrow to Piccadilly, which is about an hour longer than usual. So he'd been beaten up once or twice, with rolled-up newspapers, and he was getting very bothered about it.
Another addict, whose name she gave us, lives in Hounslow, and he kindly agreed to be interviewed. To protect his anonymity, we recorded the interview in subdued lighting, and not in his own home, but in the home of his next-door neighbour, a Mr. Taylor of 46 East Walk.
Quite frankly, Mornington Crescent cost me my job. I make no bones about it. I suppose it was my own fault, but once I was hooked... Well,
what was your job?
I was a ticket seller on the Central Line.
And in what way did this...
in the obvious way, really. Somebody would come up to me in my booth and hold out a £1 note and say maybe Bond Street. And I couldn't resist. I suppose I couldn't fight it. And the minute they'd say Bond Street, I come straight back with Turnham Green or Fulham Broadway or even Goldhawk Road.
And very good play,
or
too,
Westbourne
if I may say
Park.
So. Good Lord, that's absolutely incredible.
Well, I was playing at that level.
Yes.
Well, the worst was the time with this woman. She comes up and she says, Great Portland Street. I really couldn't help myself. I couldn't.
No, but sure.
I came out with Latimer Road.
Oh, no.
She was a player. She whammed right back at me with Edgware Road.
And what did you do?
Cockfosters.
To a woman?
She was class. We was at it hammer and tongs for half an hour. She'd give as good as she got.
Yes. Who won?
They broke us up. Bucket of cold water job. Half an hour. The queue for tickets was 3 times round the block.
And so you lost your...
I lost my job, yeah.
And have you played since?
No, never.
Thank you for being so frank. Actually, where were you a ticket seller?
Queensway.
Fulham Broadway.
Barons Court.
Kentish Town.
Stepney Green.
White City.
Embankment.
Dagenham Heathway.
Moore Park.
Banjo! So what can be done to help these sufferers? Claire Rayner again.
Fortunately, help is available. There's now an organisation called Mornington Crescent Anonymous. It's mockers for short, M-O, so you follow it. And I often say to people, putting the mockers on them is definitely the answer to their addiction. They're in Wimpole Street now, you know, their original offices were in Mornington Crescent itself, but it made life very difficult for addicts living south of the river, so they couldn't get to it if they were playing Lippmann's rules.
But it isn't only players of Mornington Crescent who may need help. It now seems possible that the game itself is in jeopardy. Conservative plans for London following the abolition of the GLC will necessitate radical alterations to the rules. For example, one Tory proposal is to rename all streets with Labour connotations, including Trott Street, Livingston Road and High Street Ken. But leader of the GLC, Ken Livingstone, believes other Tory plans could be even more devastating.
I don't think you're just going to get the abolition of all the names which have any connotation with the grand traditions of this great movement of ours in London. But you'll get things like Penny Lane turned into Lawson Street, and Hanger Lane into Britain Road, and no U-turns allowed because it's contrary to government policy, creates a climate of wishy-washy pinkoism. Now, we also know that great historical events, such as the Tolpuddle Martyrs, I mean, they used to meet in a pub next to Mornington Crescent, and that's behind, as we understand it, behind the government's decision that Mornington Crescent should be one of the stations to close.
But like other aficionados of the game, Ken Livingstone is determined not to give up hope.
I think it's important to see some light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, the Labour Party is pledged to restore a GLC with wider powers, so we could perhaps have 2 or 3 Mornington Crescents under the next Labour government, and all this wickedness will be done away with, and once again people will be happy and dancing in the streets like Victory Day.
Let us hope his dream is fulfilled. Next week, in part 2 of this programme, The Rules of the Game, we shall reveal to the uninitiated exactly how to play Mornington Crescent. Meanwhile, let's end this week as we began with the I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue teams. What are their favourite moves?
I'd have to go for Knightsbridge to Ongar.
Oh, I don't know. My favourite move, though, must be Knightsbridge to Ongar.
Oh.
Knightsbridge to Ongar.
Well, it has to be Ongar to Knightsbridge, but I suppose everyone says that.
Everyman's Guide to Mornington Crescent was presented by Raymond Baxter. It was researched and compiled by Graham Garden, Tim Brooke-Taylor, Willie Rushton, Barry Cryer, and the producer, Paul Mayhew Archer.
Witness the lifting of the veil on one of broadcasting's greatest mysteries as we join Andrew Marr in Search of Mornington Crescent.
Mornington Crescent. Only a game. Or is it? Every year, the BBC Sports and Parlour Games Department gets one question asked again and again, more times than any other. The question: why, oh why, do you not broadcast the definitive rules of Mornington Crescent? For reasons too complex to go into here, these pleas have always been ignored. That is, until now. So why the change of heart? Well, because this summer, for the first time in living memory, the people of UK Great Britain have been gripped by what can only be called Mornington Crescent fever, or Mornington Crescent mania, or frenzy. But whatever you call it, the nation has been gripped by it, and with very good reason.
Great Portland Street.
It's been called the most exciting game of Mornington Crescent ever played.
Sloane Square.
The climax of the 2005 series against Australia.
Buckingham. Good on you, mate!
5 days of mounting tension had the entire nation on the edge of its seats as the fortunes of the game went first this way and then that.
Queensway.
At times, the Australian tourists seemed to gain the upper hand, only for the home side to rally and dig deep to resist the shattering onslaught.
Elephant Castle, Marble Arch.
On the 4th day, rain threatened to disrupt play, but luckily the contest was taking place indoors. This time, nobody was going to get wet. Then on day 5, with a home win well and truly on the cards, the visitors complained about the light. The teams agreed to switch to lager, and play was resumed.
Mornington Crescent!
The rest is history. The victorious team riding on the top of a bus through Trafalgar Square, spraying the crowds with champagne, dancing in the streets, stumbling into number 10 Downing Street, and even embracing the Prime Minister before the police could catch them. Everyone was bitten by the Mornington Crescent bug. I know it bit me. And almost overnight everyone was clamouring to play the game, and most importantly, to learn the rules. In this programme, we aim to give you the official version of those rules, a task that's proved surprisingly more difficult than you might think.
I've heard of some of the rules, but I don't know how to employ them, no.
I've listened to it many times on the radio and I can't work the rules out at all.
Beats me. I haven't got a clue.
I think it's something to do with the tube map, but other than that, I've not managed to fathom it out at all.
I've gone online and had a try, but I get totally lost anyway, so it doesn't really help me.
I've tried to play it and I don't understand it.
No, I follow only the Italian TV.
Dead people and breakfast food? I'm not sure.
Never heard of it.
Like most people, I've played a simple family version of Mornington Crescent in the car on long drives, or on rainy holiday afternoons, or as an icebreaker at a wedding or memorial service. But I've certainly never played at a really competitive level, and the reason's quite simple. Like almost all amateur players, I don't really know all the rules.
I suppose most people know one or two rules, enough to allow them to play a simple game, or they may know the legendary trick opening of Fool's Crescent. That's where even a complete novice can guarantee to win the game in 2 moves.
As well as being a household name as an expert on Victorian contraptions, Adam Hart Davis is also a part-time games expert. The game clearly has a real history, like chess, so there must be a way that I, a completely ignorant novice, could be taught how to master its intricacies.
Of course, there's no way a completely ignorant novice could be taught how to master the intricacies of the game, not even if he or she went right back to the beginning, to the father of the game, N.F. Stavold. It was in 1782 that Stavold published the first Mornington Crescent Almanac, still affectionately referred to as Willesden. In it, he formulated the rules of the MCC, and as first president, he was also responsible for choosing the colours for the members' blazers and ties, tasselled hats and socks, and he also specified the length of their hair, moustaches and teeth. And he was also the one who dictated their diet, their religion, their politics and their choice of wives.
So, to sum up, it was N.F. Stavold who invented the rules. Adam Hart Davis again.
It's commonly assumed that N.F. Stavold invented the rules, but he didn't. No, he recorded them. He was just the first person to write them down. The rules already existed from way back, but precisely where they first came from is lost in the mists of time.
I'm the current holder of the Mornington Crescent Regional Championship title, North East Region, Monday to Thursdays.
Graham Garden. If anyone's able to explain the rules of the game, it ought to be him.
To understand the rules properly, well, where to start? There's so many of them. OK. Play always progresses to the left, and then continues in the normal figure-of-8 pattern, and that's it. So apart from... Oh, no, hang on. I did a documentary for Radio 3 on the history of the game a few years back, and I think we covered the rules in that. I'm nearing the peak of Ben Cruachan, highest of the range of hills that stand guard here over the mouth of Glen Orchy. On a day like this, when the wind cuts like a knife, driving the rain like a whip, you might think there is no more unlikely place to be looking for the rules of Mornington Crescent. And you'd be right. So I'm off home. Single to Marble Arch, please.
There we are. That'll be £237.50, please.
Do you take plastic?
I just plop it in the recycling bin.
All right.
I see you've been away up the brae.
Yes, I have. It's for the children.
Aye.
I didn't realise the Northern Line came this far north.
Och, you'd be surprised the number of London folk buys a ticket to Oban. Oh, it's a careless diction, I believe.
On the long underground journey south to London, I caught up on my reading. On the seat beside me, quite by chance, I found a discarded copy of the Mornington Crescent magazine, dated April 1947. Leafing through it, I was soon almost asleep, when an article struck my attention. In it, Gilbert Harding laid out the complete rules of Mornington Crescent in great detail. I couldn't be bothered to read the whole thing, but I noticed a photo of Berwick Abbey, which we were just passing at the time, and so, on a whim, I pulled the emergency stop, paid the fine, and stepped lightly from the train. Here, in the great vault of Berwick Abbey, we find a clue to the earliest trace of the rules. I'm with the present librarian, Walter Pugh, and what we are actually looking at is the legendary Book of Kells.
Yes, it was the work of Brother Kenneth, who was deputy abbot in Berwick in about 800 AD. Kenneth was known to the other brothers here as Kell, and the abbey records are full of references to that Book of Kells.
And it certainly is a beautiful thing.
Yes. Have you got gloves?
Yes, look, I bought these old gardening gloves. And here, on this page here, there it is.
There it is, the Mappa Mundi.
Tell me about it.
Oh, I thought you'd be interested.
Well, yes, I am interested, truly, in the Mappa Mundi. Well, I mean, tell me about it.
Well, as the name implies, the Mappa Mundi was designed as an early form of weekly planner. Indeed, not unlike modern diaries, it has several useful extra features. A Saxon-Norman conversion table, how many cubits to the groat and so on, a list of apothecaries open at weekends, the phases of the moon, and this route map.
And scholars now believe that encoded in this route map are the earliest clues to the rules of Crescent of Mornington.
That's right.
And it's also wonderfully illuminated. The colours are as fresh today. Oh, it's all right, so beside her.
Oh.
This is fascinating, you know. I must take a photocopy of this.
Oh, sir, I'm afraid we don't.
No, it's all right, I don't need the whole page. It's hard to believe that I am now holding in my hand the earliest recorded copy of the rules of Mornington Crescent. And here we are. Rule 1.
For some reason, the rest of the reel is taken up with a recording of tape running off the end of a spool. At this point, it would be as well to remind ourselves of the importance the game still has in our modern sporting world. The BBC's Barry Davies has commentated on everything from league matches to cup finals, from the World Cup to the Olympics, and has also covered football.
Well, to understand the rules properly, you have to decide first what version you're playing. A lot of people forget just how much heated argument there's been over the game in recent years. I mean, the old rivalry between Mornington Crescent Union and Mornington Crescent League shows no signs of going away. The handicapping system, however, has resolved a lot of the problems in the professional game. So now we have people competing on a level playing field, whether they're heavyweight, lightweight, paperweight, pie-weight or Notting Hill weight.
I visited distinguished Mornington historian and one of the acknowledged masters of the modern game, Humphrey Lyttelton. I followed the secret directions to Humph's country home, an address which turned out to be an Elizabethan manor house set in a rolling parkland estate just outside Surrey. It was no surprise that the door was opened by a butler in full livery. Good afternoon.
Who's at the front door, Lyttelton?
It's me, sir.
Are you talking to someone?
You have a visitor, sir.
Show him in.
Mr. Cry will see you now, sir.
Actually, it was you that I wanted to see.
You'll find him in the library, sir, filed alphabetically.
No, I'd rather talk to you.
Oh, they all say that, sir.
Actually, I'd rather assume that this was your home.
It is, sir.
I mean, that you owned it. I didn't realise that you were Barry Cryer's butler.
It isn't something one advertises, sir.
No. All right, can you tell me about the rules of Mornington Crescent?
I suppose so. For the usual fee.
Not having any money about my person, it was lucky for me that Humph was prepared to accept the gift of a vintage cash register by way of reward. Our discussion covered every possible fascinating historical aspect of the great game. On one occasion, Humph and his customary playing companions were kind enough to recreate a game of Mornington Crescent as it might have been played in the Middle Ages. Here it is.
It's believed that when London was just a small village, it would have been possible for players to actually move around physically, shouting out their moves as they went. With the aid of modern technology, it's now possible to recreate the conditions of medieval play. Our three regular modern-day players travelled on foot and moped around the city. Oh, hang on a minute. They travelled on foot and moped around the city. Graham Garden made the first move.
Well, here I am outside Camden Town Tube Station, so that'll be my opening gambit. Camden Town. Tim.
Right. Off I go. I'm on my trusty moped, and in front of me, on the handlebars, I've got the knowledge board, which contains the full list of possible destinations and the shorter version of the travelling rules. Now, let me see.
Oi, watch where you're going, mate.
Okay, sorry.
Hello?
Barry? Hello? Willsden Green.
Hello? Who's that?
Tim?
No, he's not here, sorry.
Who's that?
Barry.
No, it's Tim.
Tim, hang on, I've got a phone call for you.
Never mind that. Willsden Green.
What?
Your move.
Taxi.
Elephant and Castle, please.
Yeah, you're that Barry Cryer, ain't you?
Yes.
Hey, laugh? No, I never liked you myself. But to be fair, I'll tell you what, my wife, she's funnier than you.
Elephant and Castle and less of your lip.
Certainly, Squire. Sorry if I spoke out of turn. Here, them asylum seekers.
What about them?
They get a rotten deal, don't they? Me and my fella cabbies, we're having a whip round to pay for a party to cheer them all up down the local centre. Salt of the earth, them asylum seekers, and no mistake.
Just a minute. You're not a real cab driver, are you?
How very observant of you, Mr. Cryer.
Help! I'm being abducted. En route to Elephant and Castle. Just passing Waterloo. Repeat, just...
This strange turn of events gave everyone at the time pause for thought. Could it be that someone was trying to prevent the rules of the great game being broadcast? As it turned out, Barry Cryer's apparent abduction was to do with an unrelated matter, and once one or two misunderstandings had been smoothed out and money had changed hands, no more was said. Nevertheless, it does appear that London's taxi drivers are very protective of the rules of what they see as their game, what they call the knowledge.
The Royal and Ancient Order of Cabbies have always had a very special interest in the game.
Tim Brooke-Taylor is seen as a keen amateur historian and golfer.
Quiet, please. 4.
Oh, shot.
Yes, the cabbies were the ones who preserved the rules and traditions of the game during what became known as the Great Suppression. This happened during the brief Commonwealth under Oliver Cromwell's protectorship, and it was Cromwell's persecution that, to all intents and purposes, drove Mornington Crescent underground, where it has stayed, in a very real sense, ever since. Actually, it's believed that Mornington Crescent was banned by Cromwell, like bear baiting and fox hunting, not for the suffering inflicted on the animals, but for the pleasure it brought to the people. Hole in one!
In time came the Restoration. The gaming houses were reopened across the land, and a new age of Mornington Crescent mania began. In the newly licensed theatres, plays were put on to celebrate the invention of new gaming moves, a prime example being the Bromley by Bow stratagem by Arthur Farquhar. In this extract, the parts are taken by Sir Michael Gambon and Dame Judi Dench.
My lady!
Fie, my lord Broke-Lightly. What brings you to this lady's chamber?
My 2 stout legs conveyed me hither, as true as they carried me from the Charing Cross, and that as quick as silver.
A pretty wit, and neatly put.
Would that I wot were pretty, were but wit enough to put it neatly. Where I went, I would put that what I wot were wit. I find the lady alone, and in that jocund mood, I will sport with her. La, my lady foster-maid, did I not spy you this very noon abroad in Chancery Lane?
Why, that signifies not a thing. For is not Chancery Lane but a bound to Holland Park?
A very bound indeed, and thence mayhap a spring to Blackfriars. You must needs be nimble to match my pace.
I match your pace or pace your match, as readily as I would thatch your pate.
She would distract me, but I'll parry and confound her with a thrust from whence she least expects.
I heard that.
Damn.
Temper the violence of your mood, my lord, I pray, lest I may take myself to Regent's Park in a fit of contrition.
Then hie us to Covent Garden, madam. What say you to that?
Mornington Crescent.
You bitch!
At this point, we can take a rest from spelling out the rules of the game and follow up a fascinating sideline.
I have here a newspaper cutting dated 1873.
In brooke-taylor.
In it, there is mention of two great towering figures in the game's history, Lady Ottoline Worrell and Sir Ferdinand Thompson. Worrell and Thompson announced in the press that they had recently married and were proposing to set up a hostelry serving food to the gentry. Whether Worrell and Thompson succeeded, whether they had any offspring, and whether their culinary skills passed down to future generations, we shall never know. To find out more, we consulted TV chef Ainsley Harriott. He was busy and referred us to fellow television kitchen meister Anthony Worrell Thompson.
Actually, to understand the rules properly, you really have to understand the kind of food that players traditionally enjoyed during play. In fact, the game has had a profound effect on British cuisine over the years.
That would explain quite a lot.
Yes, it does. Some of our so-called laws of cookery can be traced directly to the rules of Mornington Crescent.
So, if you understand cooking...
You understand the game, and vice versa. I mean, you would never serve shepherd's bush pie immediately after a plate of East ham. You'd be a nip.
Right.
And if you see a diagonal start on the menu, like barbican spare ribs, you know exactly what's bound to be coming next.
Which would be?
Elephant and casserole.
Of course. So what are you whipping up here?
This is cock Foster's. It's a bit like coq au vin, but in place of wine you use lager. We'll serve that on a bed of Kensal rice with some Parsons greens. The girls over there are preparing the greens.
I suppose they're in season, are they?
No, they always walk that way. And here I'm preparing the pièce de résistance, Tucknell pork.
That looks wonderful. Is it very difficult?
You've really got to have top quality ingredients. You want 4 to 5 sheets of skag end of belly pork, about an imperial kilogram, 6 eating potatoes, 1 packet of instant carrot, 1 small onion, 6 other small onions, 3 or 4 parsleys, and a knob of pepper.
Then you just cook it, do you?
No. First you line a medium-sized baking dish with pastry. If you don't have real pastry, you can just roll out a stock cube. Then you want to mince the eel halves and haddock shreds together with the turnip and form into torpedoes. Spit roast over a barbecue, Mark 7, Chapter 15. Then prepare the custard separately and serve cold. Language, please. I've warned you about that before, dear.
Although several archive recordings of the game do exist, the earliest known actual broadcast of Mornington Crescent being played was during cricket coverage. This rare footage features legendary commentators Arthur Pink and Bernard Lyttle at the Oval in 1921.
Kensal rise.
Oh, yes, that is terribly good, but, I know, Tooting Broadway.
Aha, you've fallen to my clever trap. Buckingham Gate.
Oh, my lord, yes, that was clever. I'm not sure I can parry that. Oh, look, saved by the sunshine. The rain has stopped, the covers are coming off, and the cricket can recommence.
And, yes, at last play will resume in this, the final test against India.
And with the MCC chasing India's total of 468 declared, England's hopes rest with team captain Donald Gardner and opening bat Geoffrey Hiscock as they take up their positions at the crease. I expect you can hear the crowd expressing their appreciation as Gardner gives Hiscock a friendly wave from the gasworks end.
It was a bold decision of Gardner to open the batting with Hiscock.
Well, yes, indeed. A lesser man might have saved Hiscock until later.
But what a wonderful find Hiscock has been for Gardner.
Oh, yes. A fine fellow who is the life and soul of any party. I met the team at their hotel last evening and found the head waiter playing ping-pong with Hiscock.
And as Putna Shankarandri runs in to bowl his first delivery, and oh my goodness, Hiscock is out.
Oh, well, the ball glanced off the top edge of the bat, and the wicket-keeper caught Hiscock from behind as it flicked over his shoulder.
Well, what can poor Gardner do now but watch in horror as the umpire points Hiscock towards the pavilion?
Oh, dear me. Well, as Gardner watches a consolation kiss bestowed on Hiscock by a lady in the pavilion enclosure, there'll be a short delay as the number 3 gets himself padded up. So, where were we in our game of Mornington Crescent, Bernard?
I believe I was going to Turnham Green.
My word, oh dear. Well, you could take that 2 ways.
Steady, old boy.
Quite by chance, it turned out that the object of this programme, the definitive rules of Mornington Crescent, came to light not in an old book, but hidden away where no one was ever expected to find them. The rules had lain undiscovered and undisturbed for many years, and in fact it was only last January, when the BBC TV engineers were wiping old tapes to record the Flogget archive, that they discovered and very nearly destroyed a short sequence from an Open University broadcast from 1977. It was a recording of Cambridge mathematopian Dr. Todd Gruce, explaining a newly discovered and sensational mathological proof.
Today we'll see how modern ways of thinking can lead us to unexpected solutions. One outstanding example being the notorious case of Fairlop's last theorem.
Obvious when you think about it. Dr. Gruce is referring to the work of Jean-Baptiste Fairlop, the 18th century Belgian arithmetarian. Careful attention to Gruce's lucid Open University explanation makes everything at last perfectly clear.
So, what do we find as we come with fresh eyes to Fairlop's mysteriously unprovable equation? Leicester squared plus Sloane squared equals Trafalgar squared. It has long been maintained, though never proved, that this does not apply for any square north of Leicester. We can represent this graphically like this. Or, if we prefer, like this. You will see that using Poke's differential, we can now construct the equation theta equals delta Leicester over delta Sloane times constant c squared. We can go on to rationalize this equation, but only by using quantum trigonometry, chaos theory, and a whole other piece of chalk. Fortunately, the calculation time can be almost halved if we enlist the aid of this portable home computer. To save even more time, here are the result cards we punched out earlier this year. And here at last is Fairlop's proof, which lays out a simple to grasp version of the straight rules of Mornington Crescent, punched out as plain as day on these 4 cards. Here they are. Card 1, Card 2, Card 3, and Card 4.
And there we have it. Now, there's no excuse for any of us not to play up, and play the game. Goodbye.
Lower Regent Street.
Oh, Mill Hill Broadway.
Ah, now I understand it. Yes, I see now, yeah.
Tooting Beck.
Charles Square.
Oh, that's how it's played.
Stamford Bridge.
Morden.
Oh, I see. Thank you. I was so baffled before.
Euston Road.
Oh boy, I'm cornered. Wait. Totteridge.
Oh, so that's how it's played.
Swiss Cottage.
Plaistow.
Oh, for goodness sake, is that how it's played? Get it now.
Well, all I can do is Marylebone.
Camden Town.
Oh, well, I never...
In Search of Mornington Crescent was written and researched by Graham Garden with contributions from Ian Pattinson. The programme featured Barry Cryer, Graham Garden, Tim Brooke-Taylor, Humphrey Lyttelton, Simon Greenall, Barry Davis, Anthony Worrell-Thompson, Sir Michael Gambon and Dame Judi Dench. It was produced by John Naismith and was a random production for BBC Radio 4.
Arnold's Grove.
Mornington Crescent.
I think so.
And there's another chance to hear that programme at 3 o'clock on Monday, the 2nd of January. In a moment, we hear from our BBC correspondents around the world. First, here's Francine Stock, looking ahead to tomorrow.
If you could give me less than an hour, I could give you a man who intimidates wolves.
I preferred 4.5 hours on the M6.
What a lovely audience you've been. Thank you very much.
And he really meant that.
I didn't mean it. No, I did. Mornington Crescent was the... Marvellous.
Keep that child quiet.
Yes, Mornington Crescent. Wait a minute. Right.
There was a printing mistake in the script. It's actually website, not websit.
I thought that was intended.
Yeah, I did.
So did I. It made me laugh.
Right.
Yes.
I just read what's here, I don't know.
These bureaucrats.
It sounded like the sort of thing Humph would not get quite right.
I beg your pardon. Right, do it again.
But he'd only pretend not to get it right.
We have an email from a Mrs. Trellis of North Wales, who's visited... who's visited our website with some advice from... That'll do.
We must go. Thank you very much.
But do stay if you want to.
Put the lights out before you leave. That's all. So thank you very much. Good night. Cheerio.
Hello and welcome to I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue.
So I'm here with Humphrey Lyttelton, who is chairman of I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue. He's a jazz trumpeter of legend, national treasure, humorist, calligrapher, and subversive, I think. Congratulations on getting to 30 years with this show.
Thank you very much. I don't know how we've done it, but it's nice to be here.
It's been 30 years. You were there from the very beginning, but you weren't always the host. Is that right?
Well, at the very beginning, I did the pilot. Because in those days, anybody who did any broadcasting, I'd done a bit about music, about jazz and things, anybody who did any broadcasting and sounded articulate would eventually be called on to do some kind of a pilot, you know. And that's a, you know, sort of sample program that one hoped would go out on the air. They never did. 90% of them went down the plug after they'd been done, because producers had a budget to do every year, and if they didn't do enough of them, they cut their budget, so they used to do them in that. And I thought this was one of them. I just went in, you pick up a studio fee, no chance of it coming out, so I went in and did the first one. They tried to do it all ad-lib, which meant that I sat there in the middle of 4 people sweating profusely, you know, because on radio with no time, studio time, to go back and redo an ad-lib situation, it was very nerve-wracking. So,
but you'd not been known in radio. You were a jazz man, basically.
Yes.
And so how did it occur to anyone to have you as the chairman?
I had started a program which is even longer running than this one in 1967, which was a jazz program called The Best of Jazz, and that still goes out on Monday nights. That's been going for 33 years or something. So you know, they knew that I could talk into a microphone. Hello and welcome again to I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue, the show which does for entertaining panel games what being hit repeatedly on the head with a large croquet mallet does for small frogs. Or so I'm told. I did the pilot, but when they came through and said we're going to put it on the air, I had already some dates in the book, you know, with my band and so on. So Barry did the first one, I think, of the... he may have done a few more than the first one in the series, and I took it up from then.
You were sustaining a pretty hefty tour schedule throughout all this. Tim and Graham were making the goodies all through the 70s.
Yeah.
When did you find time?
Well, it's not very, very time consuming because we record them 2 at a time, and now, of course, we do them in huge theatres. I think 1,400 of Milton Keynes was the biggest. And so that occupies, we do 6 in the spring. That means 3 usually Sunday nights, and 6 more in the late autumn. So that's really only 6 days out of the year. So it doesn't, occupy an enormous amount of time. And the teams usually arrive a day earlier and sort of sort out some things, like the musical games,
right?
And I just stroll in just before the recording goes on. So
yeah.
The teams are going to sing for us now in a round called One Song to the Tune of Another. It's a game of such pure simplicity that to offer an explanation would be an insult to the intelligent mind. So teams, what happens is,
I noticed you had a quick kind of read through the cards. Is that about as much preparation as it takes now?
Well, I have to do that because, as John Naismith told the audience tonight, he brought on Ian Pattinson, who for 10 years has written my introductions and the leads into the different games. And some people say, oh, we thought it was you. No, that's not so much. But in point of fact, for me, it's a bigger challenge. It's much harder to do and much more rewarding to do well than just to think up some stuff of your own, hit or miss. Because you've got to see to it that you don't torpedo any of his punchlines. And therefore you have to think about it, think about the timing and judge it correctly, so that, for instance, a good joke doesn't disappear in laughter or applause or anything like that.
Okay, so I thought I was slightly modest because although a good portion is written down, there do seem to be these occasional ad-libs which basically bring their house down.
Well, it's all part of my persona on the programme of a grumpy chairman. When I first did the first real show, not the pilot, I drove in thinking, what am I going to do? I've got 4 professional comic actors, and I can't do it. I can't chip in with anything worth chipping in. And by the time I got to the theatre, I thought, well, that is exactly how I shall present myself, as somebody who's come in the midst of all these people. And there's a slight hint that he doesn't really want to be there, and slightly grumpy about everything. And I've done that for 30 years now. Okay, the teams are going to sing for us now in a game called One Song to the Tune of Another. You'd have to be lacking even a basic knowledge of harmony and rhythm to fail to grasp this concept. So listen up, Jeremy. A song is comprised of 2 main constituents, the words and the tune, a bit like a bottle of shampoo and conditioner, in fact. The shampoo element can be envisaged as the words, cleaning the grease and grime from our hair, although obviously the words of a song don't literally do that. This is supported by the conditioner, leaving our locks shiny and manageable and eliminating unsightly split ends, in the same way that the tune supports the words, except that words don't suffer from split ends. Now, teams, I can see you've grasped the basics already, but yes, there is one question that still needs an answer. What about dandruff? Well, even the best quality shampoo and conditioner won't always guarantee to rid us of an unsightly irritant that keeps coming back no matter how hard you try. At the piano, Colin Sell.
On the subject of ageism, is it true that I'm sorry, I haven't a clue, was going to go to television, but you were all deemed too old for television?
Well, I'm sorry to say, it's a regrettable fact that, 45 years old. We were a bit older than that, but it didn't make much difference. 45 years old is usually a sort of watershed, beyond which in television, they're always wanting young people to come in and do things. But I didn't want to do it. Willie Rushton and I held out, I think, more strongly against television. Because, as Willie said at one of the meetings we had about doing a television thing, this is, though we say it ourselves, it'll go down as one of the great BBC comedy shows that people will talk about, like Round the Horn and Itmar and all those things. And why, move into a different medium, which is, apart from anything else, going to be very hard to do. You can't have... One of the things we do very often is to play television games, but on radio. And things like we've done Through the Keyhole, and we do children's party games, Pass the Parcel, and all these things which are essentially visual things.
And the blinking game.
And the blinking game, which we do, which nobody listening at home can see what's going on. But you can't do that on television. And also television, there's a lot of hanging about and a lot of running through things, and then we just turn up and, virtually speaking, we just come on and do it, and it has a sort of freshness.
And looking at your audience tonight, you've got families, you've got young and old, you've got a rather well-heeled looking
yeah, well, it is
crowd here.
a very wide sort of range of people that we get for this show, and I know that because my audiences have improved in character since the show became, as it has been for the last decade, I suppose, sort of like a cult show, especially among young people. And I get people who come to my concerts, and they come up, and I expect I expect them to ask for a request of a jazz number in the second half, and they say, "Oh, we're nephews and nieces of Mrs. Trellis," or in fact, sometimes they come up and say, "I'm Mrs. Trellis."
Did Radiohead come up and say that? You played on a Radiohead.
That's right. Yes, I did. I started on the sort of fringes of journalism when I was a cartoonist on the Daily Mail. I used to write things, and I learned very early on that sort of journalistic principle of say yes and find out about it afterwards.
Okay, but there must have been some... I mean, if they wanted a trumpeter, a session trumpeter for a track, they probably could have... found one fairly easily, but there must have been some love in that.
Yeah, but the thing was that Johnny Greenwood, who is that guy who does the talking, he wrote to me and said, "This is probably an awful cheek, but we've got a track on our forthcoming CD which we're having terrible trouble about how to treat it, and we discussed it the other day and thought that maybe the sort of New Orleans-y jazz that we've done, they'd heard some of my early records and things. So, what do you think about it?" So I said yes, in that true journalistic fashion, and then send me a tape of the tune. Couldn't make head or tail of it, and this is where they find out about it after. Say yes first and regret it later. But we had a meeting up at the BBC, and I said, sort of half-jokingly, I said, it sounds to me as though the sort of thing that might go would be New Orleans funeral music. Because, as you know, it's not Happy Days Are Here Again when they perform. And he said, yeah, it's a great idea. So we went in the studio and spent, I think it was 9 hours or 7 hours, gradually moving. They didn't know what they wanted us to do. We didn't know what they wanted us to do. And we gradually sort of moved towards it. And after 7 hours, I said, that's it. It's not going to get any better than that. But there's a certain sort of, working with Radiohead had a certain, sorry, I haven't a clue, unexpected element about it, because Tom York, the singer, who's he writes wonderful things, that sort of always reminded me of that Procol Harum thing, the surrealistic words, and his are far out and great, and like when they came to us, we had to play the tape over and over and over, and I began to get the feeling of what he was on about, without ever, it's abstract, the concept of his lyrics and that.
Do you think that I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue is the best advert against equal opportunities there's ever been, since it seems to be mostly a boys' club?
What do you mean from the point of view of the people, the teams, and all that sort of thing?
The panel, yeah.
Yeah, well, no, I would have said the opposite, because I have nothing to do with it. I mean, I turn up and do my bit, I'm not in on any production discussions, like, for instance, Graham Garden and Tim Brooke-Taylor are. But the teams, especially since Willie Rushton died, but sometimes before, when somebody was on a tour somewhere and couldn't do it, the teams themselves always choose people to be on. And we've had a lot of the young comedians on. One who immediately comes to mind is Phil Jupiters, who enjoyed himself, enormously. He made a little speech at the end saying how he'd listened to the programme for years, and it was the best, He
was in the crowd tonight in the front row.
So I was going to see him backstage. Yeah. So the young element does come into it.
There's always been that sort of cheeky innuendo in the show, particularly with Samantha and etc. But it never crosses a line. I've found it remains innuendo, but never sort of spills into.
To tell you the honest truth, I don't really understand what any of them are getting at. I'm very surprised when I'm reading out an ordinary bit of information from the script, and the audience suddenly bursts out laughing. So. No, it all goes over my head.
So that's the secret. The secret is not to understand.
Well, the secret of it is to read what you've got in front of you. If you suspect that something has a double meaning, don't pause, don't put on a sort of leery vocal expression, if you know what I mean, on radio. Don't sort of do anything other than just read it. And if people see something rude in it, well, very few of them write into the BBC, because to do so they would confess that they saw something rude in it, you see, so they don't do it. I just read it. I just read it out.
On that subject,
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I was going to ask, you've probably answered this, but is it difficult to find younger comics to come on who know the boundaries? But maybe there aren't any boundaries.
It doesn't seem to be, because we've had I can't remember all the people. We've had Jeremy Hardy on, and we've had, of course, Stephen. We've had Paul Merton on as well. A very funny lady who's on the news quiz, and again, whose name has completely gone out of my mind. She was marvellous. Oh, we've had Sandy Toksvig as well. So there's nothing, there's nothing sexist or ageist or anything else about it.
Gives me great pleasure to welcome our regular teams of, on my right, Willie Rushton and Tim Brooke-Taylor. And on my left, Barry Cryer and Graham Garden.
I'm sorry I haven't a clue. It's 30 years old this week. How comes it's lasted so long?
It started in 1972. That would do it.
If I was to be serious, I think the main thing, which is Humphrey Lyttelton, it's one of those voices. He's funny, he's absolutely filthy, but not filthy. Brilliant writing by Ian Patterson. And I think, and Willie Rushton, the really sad thing about this anniversary is that Willie Rushton's not here, because he's such an integral part of it. And I had a chat with him actually a week before he died, and we said, when will this ever finish? And he said, well, he can go on as long as Hump's around. And I think that's what we feel now.
Yeah.
Graham, you devised the show, and it's been said that the inspiration was greed and laziness. Can you explain?
Well, that's quite true, yeah. Very good reason. Extremely good. We've been doing I'm Sorry, I'll Read That Again on the radio, and Bill Oddie and I had been writing most of the scripts, and we discovered that we were paid more for writing scripts on television, and it was not quite such hard work as writing for radio. So I came up with the idea, because I'd done a panel game, and I'd been a guest on a panel game. I thought, this is quite easy, really. And all you do is you give people a set of rules and then hope that they're funny, and then you just broadcast the funny bits. So we made up between myself and David Hatch, this sort of panel game with apparently serious rounds.
Do you remember who picked the theme music?
David Hatch, I think, picked it. He played it to me in his office and said, what about this? And I thought, that's totally inappropriate. That'll do.
There's another reason I remember doing it, because you'd been on a panel show with Giles Franker, and you thought, God, this is easy. This is money for all road. Let's get a bit of that money, and we'll provide the old road, wasn't it?
Yeah. We nearly called it old road.
Unfortunately, we didn't get the money.
The music's a piece of music called The Shickle Shamble.
Right.
Or anoraks out there. Monte Carlo went bust, wasn't it?
Yeah. Let's finish off with a round of limericks. Here's one for you, Barry. When travelling in Holland by bike.
When travelling in Holland by bike, something happened that I didn't like.
I had a mishap.
When I hit a Dutch cap.
And my finger got stuck in a dike.
There was going to be a TV version of Clue, but you were deemed too old for television.
Well, we did a pilot. BBC weren't interested, naturally. So we did a pilot for ITV, and everybody seemed to like it. We didn't get it quite right, but it was going in the right direction, and it went to the central area where they decided to put on. I said, yes, great programme, but could we have some younger people in it? Actually, the programme doesn't really exist at all, does it? Without whatever age the people are on it. Took Humphrey out. Half of it.
Yeah. Can I apologise for hogging this? Yes, you can. I apologise for hogging this.
I'll direct something at you.
But I think we always had at the back of all our minds, I think, was the worry that it is such a radio programme. I mean, it really exists on radio and works on radio and is about radio. But putting it on television might somehow take away from its myth.
That's true.
Might spoil the radio show. So we were never 100% about it.
I was 100%. I was 100%. As long as you kept going on radio as an entity.
I agree.
That was pure greed, though.
Willie was ambivalent, as I remember.
Yeah.
Sort of got fast at one point.
I would actually quite like to have done it in a way, because then you could have done some visual jokes, which you can't do on radio. So there would have been an extra element, and we started to try and put those in the pilot. Not many of them worked, because they technically wouldn't work.
As the language is constantly changing, I'd like the teams to provide some new definitions they may have spotted lately.
Polyunsaturated. A dry parrot.
Barry.
Hors d'oeuvre. Women who hang around diesel pumps.
Carpentry. A way in for ornamental fish.
Pokemon. A Jamaican proctologist.
Stucco. Hitherto unknown Marx brother.
Gripe. What Australians make wine from.
Extemporary. Permanent.
Loophole. A very long lavatory brush. Hot pot. Stolen drugs.
Hormone. No, forget it.
The internet's allowing a lot of people to play Mornington Crescent online. Is that how it should be played, or do you need eye contact?
I would think eye contact myself.
Yeah, it's a bit like poker in that sense. Yeah, it's better.
If it's the only way you get to play, it's fine. Yeah.
But it does bring a sort of international dimension to it.
It does, but as you were saying, if you can't really see the other person, you can't play absolutely properly. But that doesn't, as Graham says, it doesn't stop doing it. There could be a board game, and it's not as good, but it would be worth doing.
Now, I'd like to ask you if you'll play a special round of Cheddar Gorge on the subject of Samantha. Tim, can you start? I'm looking in that direction.
That direction.
Hold position first.
I was once
in
the BBC
looking
for a
very
rare but
strangely
intriguing and
probably
hitherto undiscovered
version
of Samantha.
But
I found that she was
not
to be
seen
in any
other
portion of the BBC, except
Once
I went
to
the
smallest room
in
the BBC,
and there
I
saw
none other
than
Samantha and
a
very close
intimate
friend who
was
none other
than
the very
same
person who
was
sitting next
to
me. Full stop. I think that's quite.
I think that paints the picture.
We talk quickly about your careers outside I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue. Barry, you've written for such comics as Kenny Everett.
I've written to a lot of famous comedians as well.
Morecambe and Wise.
Yes.
What sort of noises do we have to make?
Just, can you do farmyard? A day in the farmyard. Oh, and over there's James Cagney.
Kenny Everett, Morecambe and Wise, Bruce Forsyth,
Yes.
yes. Tommy Cooper,
Yes.
Stanley Baxter,
Yes.
Dick Emery,
Yes.
Dave Allen,
Yes.
Frankie Howard,
Yes.
Bob Hope,
Yes.
Jack Benny,
Yes.
Richard Pryor.
Yes. On one occasion.
Charles Dickens.
Charles Dickens.
You wrote for Charles.
Anthony Trollope. What a pain he was.
Tim, it says here you've worked on Me and My Girl with Richard O'Sullivan and has also worked alongside Roland Rat.
I have, yes.
Was that a great honour?
That was a great honour. And also, what's the name of the original page 3 girl? You know what I mean. Anyway, she was together, 3 of us together. And Graham and I wrote for Orson Welles.
Read that. I deliberately left that out then
because it's not funny. After Roland Rat.
Roland Rat.
It's like Milligan. I I like Roland Rat. I thought it was good. You know, best thing the Director General did for.
Yes.
People said, "Oh, the man that brought back Roland Rat." Yes.
Graham, scientific question for you. So listen carefully. What happens exactly when Eric eats a banana?
When Eric eats a banana, he turns into Banana Man, I'm afraid. Ask Tim. Tim was involved. Yes. He's not entirely innocent.
I was Eric, and I did eat that Banana Man, and I turned into Graham, who was Banana Man. Which actually, I saw one the other day, rather good.
Still going strong, popular.
Yeah.
Okay, picture round now.
Picture round.
First picture from Barry. Does that evoke any memories for you?
Yes, that was me and Johnny Vegas in The Weakest Link. We were the head-to-head finalists.
Did you win?
What? No, Johnny got it. I was just allowed by the younger ones to stay. Weakest Link.
Why on earth did you go on that?
Why on earth did I go on it?
Yeah.
I was asked to go on it, and it was charity. It was for charities.
No excuse.
I do a lot of charity work.
There's a lot of work for vanity.
I do a lot of charity work.
It's the dominatrix you like.
Oh, yes, she does stir your... She does stir your loins.
I flee to the country.
Johnny got...
Johnny
Vegas got Mr. Spock ears on. Yeah. Well, it was a comedian's edition. And I'm wearing a wig to make myself look older. And it was quite an afternoon, actually. Yeah.
A comedian's edition?
Yes, comedian's edition.
Johnny Vegas.
Yeah, but light and shade, and I was on as well. I'm cultivating a new act.
Graham, probably slightly less interesting one for you. Amongst the Teeth. What's going on there?
That's right. Gosh, yes, that's Body Matters, which I used to co-present with Gillian Rice and Helen Marion Davis, and we took a trip around the human body.
Where did you end up?
Well, we started there in the mouth. So, right. Fair enough. Leave the rest of it up to you. Yes. When we did the nose, we had Kenneth Williams sliding out of an enormous human nose. And they wouldn't let me say, "Here comes the bogeyman."
But you're able to say now.
Did the nostrils flare when you came out?
Being a doctor, do any of the other panellists come to you with their twinges?
No, I'm pleased to say they don't. They wouldn't trust me. They would say, no. You can't have an old friend as a doctor.
Actually, Graham's very good at not actually treating us, but saying either go to the hospital or not. That's okay.
Oh, he just says, "Don't do that" to me.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that.
Tim.
Oh, hello. We're getting out of this.
Your picture.
Oh, yes. What's Graham doing in it?
It's pretty obscure, that.
This was the In-Betweeners, wasn't it?
It must have been.
Yeah. The popular song we did in the 70s, it reached number 7 in the hit parade, called the In-Betweeners, and that was the cloaks over the top to the costume. It was a split costume that one side was old folk and the other side was glitter. And that's really what it is. I think we were probably on some very embarrassing programme.
On Blue Peter.
Probably, quite possibly.
Did all the pop shows.
Yeah. Crackerjack. It's true. It's the way we got onto the top of the pops. We agreed to do Crackerjack. That's right.
Is it conceivable that there could be more goodies? And I don't leave Barry out of this because you've popped up in a few episodes as well.
Yes. Yes, I did.
Bless him. Well, we're personal here. Have a word with Jane Root, who is head of BBC Two, and she keeps consistently saying, "No, I won't have them." So,
right. Well, we'll start an email.
Yeah.
Well, you probably remember the Goodies was 30 years old last year. And you remember the celebration was the street parties.
And 30 years ago, we won the Silver Rose in Montreux.
That's right.
Yes, Kit Kong. And funnily enough, we seem to get sort of passionate people now about it, because I went to Australia for a Goodies convention last year, where they've gone on showing it, and all the people there were in their 20s and 30s, which of course is the audience. The BBC desperately wants to get on board. So.
This is how Humph describes you. See if you agree with what he says. Prone to argue with the chairman, slightly vulnerable, perspires a lot, a favourite with the crowd, people hiss when I'm cruel to him, said Humph.
Yes, I think none of it's true except the bit about perspiring a lot. I do that, I have to say. Yes, no, I'll accept that. I'll accept that. I'm very pleased with that. Move on.
Barry, Humph describes you thus: the gag man. There are no embarrassing silences thanks to you.
Embarrassing noises, but not silences.
Bottomless pit of one-liners, able to come up with gags at a second's notice, provides the bricks and mortar. It's very nice, isn't it?
And they let me appear in it sometimes as well. I bring my wheelbarrow in.
Very good on plumbing.
That's very gracious of him, and particularly about my quick wits.
Anyway, what would he know?
And Graham, you're described bides his time, picks his moment, a punchline man supreme, very dry, often has the perfect punchline which helps Humph to end the round on a high note.
Helps him, eh? Very dry as opposed to the rather sweaty me, is that what he said?
Was that Humph who said that?
Yes.
So I detected Graham's style in that. I sort of put a stop to the fun, basically.
Yeah, but you bide your time.
Humph's very modest about his own comic abilities. What do you think his particular gifts are?
He's very arrogant, Alf. He wouldn't be modest with you. But, he's overbearing and quite
I was a fan of his when I was a teenager. I used to go and listen to his band, which still plays magnificently. And I still get a thrill out of working with Humph. It's extraordinary after these years. And he's such an incredibly nice man, isn't he? And very bright man. And he is modest, but he shouldn't be, because I think he's quite fantastic.
I still think it's him.
Yeah.
And how much of his stuff is written and how much is out?
Well, he is capable of writing everything, but Ian Patterson basically writes the script now, and I think Ian would say that the great thing is you're writing for a great man, and there's nothing worse for a writer than to write something that's delivered badly. Ian writes some good stuff, and Humph makes it even better, which is the perfect writer.
Yeah, absolutely. And Humph does it, obviously, in the nature of the show. It's not all scripted. Humph reads his links, and then we play the games, and Humph's interjections are his own, and very often they're showstoppers as well. So he's an extremely funny man. I don't think he knows how funny he is or how he is funny, which is probably a good thing. He just does it. He's in a great tradition, like Kenneth Horne was in Round the Horn, who was sort of the urbane man in the middle with all the idiots milling about. He's never quite sure what's going on, but just wants to get it over.
And the seeming innocence allows him to be absolutely filthy, which is, Humph can't have said that, can he? And of course everything he says is du bon ton anyway, so he hasn't said anything filthy. And he looks really genuinely surprised if the audience laughs. But he, as Graham says, he can ad-lib. There was one we recorded on Sunday. It was something your handwriting so bad I had to pin it up and run past it to read it. I still don't quite know what it means, but it made me laugh with
Programme consultant was Ian Patterson, and the producer was John Naismith.
John, how did you first come to the show?
In 1991 it was. In his grandmother's will, in fact.
Did you make any changes to the format?
There was certain, every new producer has an idea, I think, of the strengths and weaknesses of the show. It was not a show that I'd sort of consciously listened to a great deal, so I suppose I came to it sort of quite fresh and perhaps sort of relatively objectively. I think there was certain rounds that I thought maybe had been a little bit past their sell-by date. But previous producers had kept quite a good archive of past rounds, so I was able to sort of go through them initially. And I also had an exercise swiftly after taking over the show. I was asked by the Worldwide to compile an audio cassette. And I thought I'd do a compilation of past programmes. So I basically listened to, I phoned up the teams first to say, could they suggest any good rounds for the tape? And they said, I can't remember any. I couldn't remember any highlights from any of the show. So I listened to every single tape in the archive. It's about 150 programmes or something. Which was and then you found a highlight. And then I found a highlight. I found quite a few actually, and they're on the first tape.
Ian, what's your first memory of coming to I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue?
Well, in the non-professional sense, that's when I started writing. In the non-professional sense, I came to the Clue when it started. I used to listen to it in the 70s when I was in the real world doing a real job, and never thinking that some 20 years later I'd actually be working with the guys and writing on the show, which is a bit of a tragic end to a young person's career, I know, but it is. But yeah, as John described, Bob Fraser and I were writing the news quiz at the time, and the BBC in its wisdom sacked our producer, very sensibly in my opinion, and then noticed at the beginning of the next series they didn't have a producer, not so sensibly. They decided to let John have a crack at it. And I think the two shows were in production at the same time, or they overlapped or something, which meant that John had been writing the links, and some very good ones too, I thought, I have to say, but that's not necessarily a producer's job, especially since it takes the bread out of the mouths of writers who have slaved years and done an apprenticeship for this, only some amateur to make a pathetic attempt at writing a few nod gags in his spare time.
OK, teams, to assist Stephen, you'll be performing these songs as duets. I think that's right. I can't read my producer's writing. It's the worst writing I've ever seen in my life. The only way to read it is pin it up on a board and run past it.
It's a credit to all of you, really, that it's gotten funnier as time's gone on.
How sweet of you to notice. How very perceptive of you to notice, I would say. I think that, I think a bit of, well, obviously, as far as I'm concerned, is obviously the main stuff I did to write for Hump. Hump wasn't, in my opinion, doing enough. Because, not because he's lazy, simply because he wasn't being given stuff to do. And I don't think anyone had ever considered that the point of having the chairman there was to do a sort of 10-minute stand-up act in between all the rounds. But in that, virtually, if you gave him the Argos catalogue, you could read it and make it funny. So it's not such an onerous task. But you just think, yeah, I can hear him doing this. And occasionally I write a link, and I think, well, that link's easily long enough. And I think, there's another gag there. It would be nice to hear him do it. And, oh, hang on, there's a topper that could go with that. Well, I'll put it in anyway. We can always cut it out. But I do occasionally feel a bit sorry for the other guys, Tim and the rest of them, have to sit there while he grinds his way through a couple of pages of old rubbish I've been churning out the night before. You know.
The lines sometimes get pretty near the knuckle.
So not with you.
I'm talking about innuendo.
You mean nod gags?
I mean nod gags.
Oh, no. There is no rudery at all. The words on the page are completely innocent.
Humph actually said the secret to his delivery is that he doesn't actually understand the joke.
I mean, he does read it as if he doesn't get the joke, but he obviously does. But he has got that fantastic knack of genuinely looking as if it's the first time he's read it. quite often it sounds like the first time he's read it as well, but no, he really does have that ability to just pick it off the page as if he were, reading a shopping list. Something you might casually glance down.
I don't think there's any better deliverer of a line. Or a chairman of any other panel game, and I seem to have worked at almost so is Ian.
And that's probably what it is Olivier. I mean, Olivier was just hopeless. He couldn't read a line to save his life, could he?
Obviously, I'm talking about obviously the chairman of panel games, but there are, if you compare radio and television panel games, there are a few people that can get sort of laughs and rounds of applause before they've even introduced the teams. I don't know what the percentage of some people say it's sort of 50% lines and 50% delivery, but Ian has, because I've worked with him quite a lot on other ventures, both on radio and television, and it's not been completely unknown for some of the lines that Humphrey has delivered to have been used again for other performers, and I have to say that they haven't gone down nearly as well.
Has anyone ever phoned up from on high and said, I can't believe Humph has just said that?
I have sometimes get emails of praise from fellow producers, astonished that some line could have been delivered. But I got that with a Samantha line. Was it Italian? Some sort of Italian thing that she...
No, it was a nice cream thing.
Yes,
she was going to spend the evening licking the nuts off a large Neapolitan.
Yes.
And I really don't see where the joke is in that. I mean, she's simply going out.
It's an ice cream,
it's an ice cream that has
with pistachio nuts on the top.
It has nuts on it. Yes.
She was licking as one does.
Yeah. She wasn't going to commit a sexual act on an Italian. Yes. I mean, that's just ludicrous to think that.
Yes. Also,
fat or otherwise.
When the dog breeders, didn't she go to the park with a German Shepherd?
No, I think it was time to let her whip it out.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
So it's been 30 years. Any thoughts on how it's lasted and why it's still so popular?
Probably idleness on the part of the schedulers and their inability to come up with anything that could be better to replace it. It's a very good show with very good people in it, as simple as that. And it hasn't got lazy. I mean, there are plenty of rounds that used to be done which aren't done anymore. There are new rounds that have come in and gone fairly quickly. There are some 1 or 2 rounds which we've done which only ever appeared once and got fantastic laughs at the time. And yet, other shows would probably do that again, if not every week, adding tonight to it. That's not been the case. And it's also got in the panellists, sadly no longer with Willie, but certainly with the choice of some of the best guest comedians in the country. With those 4 people sat there, you have got some of the best talent there is in the country, and the diverse talent as well. I mean, they come from various different schools, partly comprehensive, part public, obviously. And where was I? Did I tell you about that? The dentist the other week. I was completely lost, I'm sorry. But there's a fantastic diversity, which means that you don't have to do it. So if you watch an awful lot of TV comedy panel games, you could swap all the people around from seat to seat and not really notice any difference. I mean, their material is much the same. If you switch the set, if you turned away from the set and just listened to it, you'd have trouble telling who was delivering which line and which joke. But there's not that problem with Clue, because each individual does have his own style, and it all adds together like some kind of bizarre oral jigsaw that sort of melds together to make something a bit bigger, I think. And I won my award for being pretentious Pradia.
It's a tremendous show, Tim. That's why it's lasted. And it combines every form of humour. Satire, nonsense, impressions, singing. It's even got a pianist. It's a tremendous, tremendous show.
Graham Garden, Sandy Coxford and Tim Brooke-Taylor have been given silly things to do by Humphrey Lyttelton, with Colin Sells setting some of them to music.
So I'm here with Colin Sell, famously the pianist on I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue. Does it seem like 30 years, and were you there from the very beginning?
It sort of takes me by surprise, actually, that yes, it's been going 30 years. I joined it, I think, 28 years ago. I didn't do the pilot, and I didn't do the first series, and then I joined it. And the reason I joined it was because the very young producer, a very good producer, who'd been asked to take it over, was a chap called Simon Brett, who of course has gone on to do lots of other things, writing books and plays and heaven knows what else. But he'd seen me do stuff up at the Edinburgh Fringe, and he just took a complete chance on me and said, I'm given this new programme to do, and I've heard you play, and I've heard you write music, and you improvise, and you can kind of cope with those things that people sort of throw at you musically. Would you like to do it? So that was back in 1974. I was in short trousers, of course, then, I was a child prodigy, really. And it was, it took me a long time to get used to it, because I was working, and I still am working, with people who were sort of my icons, really. When I was a teenager, I was watching the Goodies, and there was Barry Cryer and Humphrey Lyttelton playing jazz and all that, And Willie Rushton, of course, was an enormous name, particularly in the 60s. He made his name, really, doing That Was the Week That Was, and so on. So suddenly I was working with these people, and so for about 10 years I kept thinking they're never going to ask me back. They never asked me back, I'm sure they won't. And gradually, over a period of time, I've become, which is very nice to me, I become part of the setup,
Yeah.
I don't do much in the programme, it has to be said. If you actually analyse it, I don't do a great deal, but I get a kind of reflected glory from it, which is nice.
Yeah. And there's a certain relationship, on stage at least, between you and Humph.
Yes.
Which people enjoy.
They do, and we actually, because we get on very well, but it's good fun to play that sort of, he's antagonistic towards me, I just sit and smile blithely at him.
It was back in 1972 that Colin first started to learn the piano. Within 2 or 3 weeks, he could manage to tap out a few basic tunes with one finger. Obviously, his later career never fulfilled that early promise.
I don't have a microphone in front of me, so if I want to make any comments, I'll have to really shout. So you get this sort of disembodied voice in the background, which Humph always likes to play off and make rude remarks about me and so on.
So, have you ever got together with Humph as pianist and trumpeter?
Only a couple of occasions when we've done Christmas shows. He's had his trumpet there, and we've done the Christmas specials, and he's played Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and we've worked then with his bass player and drummer as well. And there was a book launch we did some time ago, 2 or 3 years back at Pizza Express, and we had we had a quartet then. There was Humph and me, and again his bass player and drummer, and we did quite a lot of jazz playing, which is very jolly. But no, we don't, apart from these odd occasions, we don't work together musically. We're very jolly if we did. The only thing is that many years ago I was asked to do the music for a radio version of Look Back in Anger, and Jimmy Porter, Look Back in Anger, plays the trumpet, and so somebody said to me, well, why don't you get Humphrey Lyttelton to come and play it? That was a very good idea. So it was kind of sort of revenge, really, for all the times that Humphrey Lyttelton had been rude to me in the programme. We had a good laugh about it, because I was actually getting him to come into the studio and play my music and do sort of what I told him. And because he was smashing, we had a wonderful time. It was great. He did a very good version of what the sort of trumpet playing that Jimmy Porter would have done.
Piano accompaniment will be provided by Colin Sell, who, as far as we can make out, has never had to go through any kind of checks. Actually, we were interested to hear that Colin was responsible for bringing the Beatles to Abbey Road. Camden Council have just sent in the pest controller's bill for fumigating the entire block.
There's a huge love for the show across the country, and Humph recently played trumpet on a Radiohead.
He did, yes.
Are you ever, as an icon of this show, asked to make guest appearances and stuff like that?
I have occasionally, yes. I mean, I've been involved with the odd band. I've been asked to do perhaps the odd bit of sort of cabaret playing or cocktail playing, something like that, because people, regardless of whatever talent I may have, people associate me with the show, which is nice. So yes, there are little spin-offs like that occasionally, yes. But what's interesting is that nobody knows what I look like, because there's only ever been one photograph of me published by the Radio Times, and so nobody knows what I look like. So I don't get people stopping me in the street and saying, "Oh, you can't tell," which is a bit of a relief in a way, really, because I think sometimes people, rather suffer for their being in the public eye.
Okay. Well, we'll put you on the website.
Yes, a little terrified.
I'm afraid that maybe no one will see it there either.
You shouldn't say that.
Any favourite memories of the last 30 years?
I do. I always enjoy doing the programme. Obviously we all miss Willie. I think there's two things really. One is a specific moment actually when I was accompanying Willie Rushton, and he was just doing what he always did, was like he did his own thing, and he just called out to me halfway through singing. He said, "Keep up, piano," he said, which the audience found very funny, and I did as well, because he was just making it difficult for me to follow. I think the other thing isn't so much a memory; it's just a feeling about the programme. Is that what is very rewarding is that so many younger people come into it and perform in it and love doing it, and they fit in perfectly well. It's not as if it's just older comedians and somehow shutting out the young ones. It's great to have, the sort of, we've had Tony Hawks and Jeremy Hardy and Sandy Toksvig and so on and so forth. And I dare say we could have even younger people who probably, I don't know, people of the sort of the Mark Thomas generation. And the reason I say that is because apart from doing bits of music and so on and so forth, I also run the Music at East 15 Acting School, and I found over recent years that there are more and more young people now who listen to Radio 4, and therefore I have a lot of students who actually know the programme. Whereas once upon a time, when I was teaching back until about the middle of the 90s really, young people weren't regular Radio 4 listeners, and therefore they didn't associate my name with any sort of silly radio programmes, and therefore this was a whole completely different story, So it's nice. Well, obviously I'm reaching out, and if you look at the audience we had tonight at the 30th anniversary show at the Players Theatre, it's a pretty mixed audience in ages, which is very nice. It isn't just as people of our age.
Families, as well as a lot of a couple of famous faces here. Judi Dench.
Indeed, yes, who's been on the programme, but she's actually been in it. But I've got some friends in tonight who students and so on, and they're just were begging for tickets, So that's nice. That's nice. It's spreading,
And so, ladies and gentlemen, as the plastic cup of time fails to emerge from the vending machine of destiny, and the scalding coffee substitute of fate splashes onto the unsuspecting crotch of eternity, I notice it's the end of the show, and indeed the series. But our regular teams will be back again in the spring, and what would the show be like without 4 top-class comedians? Tune in next year to find out. So, from Samantha, the teams, myself, and the fine folk of High Wycombe, it's...
Now, did you know that Barry Cryer actually chaired 3 shows in the first series of I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue, before he settled into the role of panellist, the only time in his life when he was delighted not to get the job, which of course went to Humphrey Lyttelton. Let's hear him now in Conversation, recorded on the 25th of March, 1999.
Welcome. A man known, loved and relied on by so many of us in the entertainment business. Indeed, a producer once said to him, talking of a script, "I don't want it good, I just want it tomorrow." Well, in this case, he got it the next day, and good. Today, I'm in conversation with Barry Cryer. You're a great person to interview at the moment, because, of course, your autobiography is recently out.
Virgin 12.99, but I don't want to talk about it.
It seems, I have to say, reading it, like a slightly lonely childhood.
Yes. My dad died when I was about 5. My elder brother, who was 9 years older than me, disappeared into the Merchant Navy, and then he came back home to Leeds, and it seemed to me at that age that he disappeared again immediately. He came down to London to work as a civil servant, so it was just me and my mum, And
of course, going to school, presumably that was a fun experience.
Oh, yeah. Little local school run by the Newman sisters, yes. One was called Hilda, and the other one wasn't. I can't remember it. That was happy, and then... slightly more bleaker atmosphere, Talbot Road in Leeds, Mr. and Mrs. Gannon, husband and wife, who ran this school out of virtually a semi-detached house. They were a formidable couple. I don't want to over-dramatise it, but Mrs. Gannon would actually... I wasn't involved in music when I was there, for some reason, but some of the other kids would play the piano, and they would get the cane across the knuckles while they were playing.
While they were playing?
Yes. I think I mentioned it in the book. And years later, I went to see The Seventh Veil, and Todd and James Mason, and he smashes her across the knuckles.
You'll never play the piano.
When she's playing the piano, if you don't play the piano for me, Francesca, he won't play it for anybody, whatever he said. And anybody sitting near me in the cinema must have wondered why I said Mrs. Gannon audibly. The memories that came back.
And then you got a scholarship. You went to the local Leeds Grammar.
Leeds Grammar School. I went to, yeah.
And when did the performing side of things come out? Because you started as a performer rather than a writer, really.
Yes. Well, I mean, at school, like lots of people did, I played Falstaff. Enormous number of lines. You're like a sponge when you're young. How you can learn lines. I'm having to learn lines at the moment for a musical, and they won't go in, but when you're a kid, you just soak them in. So I did plays at school, yeah.
And you got the acting cup for Falstaff, I think.
Yeah, we shared it. John Deadhill, my mate, who played Prince Hal, and I shared the acting cup, and we went up to get it from the then Princess Royal. And as she handed it to us, it came apart. The black base, you know, the little plinth bit came off, so I gave John the plinth and held the cup up, and I thought, oh dear, looking back.
Grabbing, upstaging.
Yes, he got a laugh at speech day, and I thought, oh dear.
Now, first time you got a public laugh?
Yes.
And it
I think the midwife laughed quite a lot years earlier. But yes, it was the first time with an audience and a real laugh reaction, yeah. The damage was done. Although I never had a vocational thing about going into show business or anything.
But I think you'd been a fan of radio comedy, hadn't you? Maybe.
Oh yes, very much so. Yeah.
Here's a little aid memoir to those days, Barry.
And hello, Hutch. What are you doing with the face as long as Izzy Bond's top note?
What do you mean by spreading the tale that I'd come into money?
Well, you shouldn't wear mink corsets and a banana skin coat.
You even offered to put a ring on my finger.
Well, I couldn't get at you, big toe. You've got your boots on.
I'm impervious to further insults from a stupid nincompoop.
Are you suggesting that I'm nincompoopus mentis? I shall sue you for state and kidney paupers.
What are you talking about?
The law. Everything you say will be taken down, mended and put on again.
Now, you're not going to ask me what Tommy Handley was like to work with, are you?
I was going to ask you how you brought his career on, Barry. You know, how you
No, you used to listen to him. Endless puns and jokes. He was from Liverpool, the spiritual home of so many great ones, and he was so fast. The humour is dated a lot now. If you listen to an old Itmar, you might not sort of hold your sides with mirth, but you just got to admire the sheer skill and the speed.
The technique is there.
And Ted Kavanagh, who wrote them, virtually invented the idea of catchphrases, filling a show with catchphrases, which never dies. The Fast Show do it now.
Any other favourites from that period, Barry? Anything else that really...
Max Wall.
Did you ever write for him?
No, never wrote for him. I was a stagehand at Leeds Empire subsequently, and the great Wall came to play a week in Leeds, and I just... when I should have been working or picking something up, or I would watch him.
Just stand in the wings and watch.
Just stand. I thought, I want to be you. But even then, I hadn't got this showbiz ambition. But that was just a job I went for, you know.
No, but Barry, there must have been some of it around, the very fact you were standing in the wings at the Leeds Variety.
Yeah, well, I'd been in the student shows, the rag reviews, and then I was out of work, and I just went back to the theatre and asked for a job.
Because you went from school, you did start a university course.
Yes, I'm BA Englit failed. My first year results at university betrayed the fact that I hadn't been working. I'm ashamed looking back, totally responsible. And a guy turned up in Leeds and saw... To see somebody in the student show, not me, and saw me telling some jokes in something and offered me work.
And what was that first work?
The work was touring with my mother couldn't speak of this. It was touring with strippers. I think the show was called Nudes of the World, or We've Got Nothing On Tonight, or something. Constant motif in my so-called career, Paul.
Now, was this the days where they still had to stand still in
they
tableau?
had to stand still. So we used to go behind the scenery and try and make them giggle.
But in your professional part of the job, you went front cloth, presumably, while they set up the tableau and did your 5 minutes.
Yes, I was the bottom of the bill comic. You did about 12 minutes.
Now, talking about the nude reviews, obviously that's how you migrated on, because you ended up at the Windmill, the Legendary.
I came down to London and on a 17-day rail return ticket, what I thought I was going to do in London in 17 days, I think it was a good deal, the price of the ticket. And on the 16th day, the day before, sounds biblical, doesn't it? And on the 16th day,
you created comedy.
The day before the ticket ran out, I got an audition at the Windmill. 6 shows a day, 6 days a week.
Now, this must have been just after the kind of the legendary days of the Windmill, when all the ex-service guys came out.
Oh, I proved that. The legendary days.
In its demise at this point.
But I worked there with a fellow called Bruce Forsyth.
He was top of the bill when you...
I never knew what happened to him, but he was top of the bill.
Well, you say that.
You're quite right, Paul. Prior to... This was 1957. In the earlier 50s, there'd been Jimmy Edwards, Peter Sellers, Harry Seacombe. Wonderful gallery of people.
But it was still going 6 shows a day, new tableau and
yes,
comics coming on.
36 shows a week.
which was tough because they really didn't come to see you with all due
Oh, no,
respect.
they didn't come to see the comic.
But
It was
just
just
complete
indifferent.
disinterest.
They would open newspapers when you walked on. And there's a marvellous comic called Jimmy Edmondson walked on, and the man in the front row opened his paper, and Jimmy said, "Oh, I see you brought your own comic." You learn not to be frightened. I mean, I learned to face hecklers later on in nightclubs and everything, but the windmill was just silence. You could hear the sound of your feet as you walked on the stage.
So I suppose great, because I mean, most comics have this horrible memory of dying occasionally, but you were dying 36 times a week.
Oh, yes, I mean, Jimmy Edwards, God bless him, said any comic who said I tore them up at the windmill and got big laughs is a liar. He said, somebody as good as him. Now and again later in the day, fifth or sixth show, it might pick up a bit.
A couple of drinks on.
As you rightly say, they hadn't come to see you.
Of course, the theatre was still run by this legendary man, Vivian Van Damme.
Vivian Van Damme, who asked to be known as VD, he loved his nickname. And his daughter Sheila, who was a great rally and racing driver. And he was marvellous to me.
But he was a real comedy professional, wasn't he?
Oh, yes. The first day I worked there, I was in a state of shock because I auditioned at 10:30, and I was on the stage at 12:30, not knowing what was happening, because he said, "Do you want to work here?" And I said, "Oh, yes," thinking he meant 3 weeks on Monday or next year. And he meant that day. And I went on in my ordinary clothes, and in those days you put pancake makeup on. I borrowed some of that. And I came off after this highly successful silence the first show that day. And I was summoned to the great man's office, and I stood between the fish tank and the desk. And he said, "Do your act for me now. Go on, do it." And he made me do it all over again. And he's saying, "Don't like that one. I know a better one than that. That shouldn't be at the beginning. Put that at the end." And he had me in his office in between every show. Every show. And by the end of the day, I'd almost got a new act. He'd changed. He'd really reshaped and moulded what I was doing.
Did that process really start you to think, actually, there's a science to this? You know, there is a...
Oh, yes. It was a masterclass with him. Just in one day, it was amazing. And I was there for about 7 months. And he was a sadist, because the shows would run however many weeks. But you wouldn't know if you were going to be in the next show, whether he was still working. And
Bruce was going through all this as well at the top of the bill.
Yeah, Bruce was the only one who ever worked there. There were honours boards outside, names in gold leaf or whatever. And Bruce was the only comic who ever worked there who had his name on the boards when he was still working there.
But even he, I think, got to the point where he said, "I'm going to open a tobacconist."
Yes, that's right. He'd been a double act with his wife, and then he became a single act as a comedian. And he said to me one day, he said, "I've got as far as I'm going to get. Oh, I'm fed up with all this." So I said, "What are you going to do?" He said, "I'd like a little shop." And the following year, he got the job as compere Sunday night at the Palladium, which was an enormous break for him. And I bumped into him in Kingsway in London. He'd just been to a press conference for the first... He was very nervous and frightened. He was going to do his first Palladium on the Sunday.
Live.
And I said to him, "What happened to the tobacconists?" He said, "Postponed." Postponed for 40 years currently.
Yes, he still hasn't opened it.
Still hasn't opened a tobacconist.
You, on the other hand, really about this time that you moved more to writing.
Oh, yes. I met an actress called Anna Quayle, and she was doing reviews. She was going to do one at the Fortune Theatre in London. That's even prior to Beyond the Fringe, which just knocked us all sideways and changed everything. And I wrote one or two things for Anna in the show, so I was a theatre writer. And then Danny LaRue came in to see the show and said, "Who wrote that?" and asked me to write nightclub shows. And my friend Ted Dix playing the piano. So I became a nightclub writer. Then David Frost came into... I've been so lucky.
David came to see that.
David came to Danny LaRue's club and asked me to write for him. I became a television writer. So it was a nice sequence. Very lucky.
Let's go back to writing. Did you see that back? Because I think at this time you were suffering from extremely bad eczema.
Oh, yes. Head to foot job, yeah.
There was pressure here, obviously. There was something going on inside.
There was something going on, and it all started to disappear when I got married. Draw your own conclusions. I don't know.
Do you think that having had that experience makes you... do you find yourself, as a writer and in script meetings and so on, resistant to, so much of comedy can be about laughing about people other than
I think
ourselves?
You have your own taboos. I was devoted to the Goon Show, and Spike Milligan wrote a line, "The door opened and there stood a tall man in a ginger hat with eczema or something," and I penned this enormously pompous letter about making jokes about eczema. I obviously... Well, I don't know, you see, it's what the joke is and who the individual is telling it. I would obviously not react warmly to jokes about skin problems. We all have our subjective reaction. But the taboos have fallen one by one, as you know. You've been working for some years, haven't you?
To break these taboos.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Did Spike reply? I have to ask you.
No, it went to the agency. I never heard. I think I mentioned it to him once later. He said, Must have got lost in the post.
So you got married, and I think actually Danny was responsible for introducing you to Ted.
Yes, this was a club called Winston's before Danny had his own club. And there was this girl there who'd been in pantomime with Dan, playing Prince Charming. He was playing one of the ugly sisters. And that was it. And that's where I met Terry, my wife, at rehearsals. I'd never even been in a nightclub, and neither had she. And it was that was an education in itself. The show was 1:15 a.m.
One show, 1:15.
One show, 1:15.
So the punters have had a big dinner.
Oh, they're out of it, some of them.
I was going to say, yeah.
But Danny's club, that was good time Winston's, with a very tasty clientele who had one or two disagreements and discussions with other people involving various bits of metal and... no, you got the picture.
This was the heyday of London's gangland West
yes,
End, yeah?
Indeed. Ronnie and Reg used to come to Winston's.
They did,
shows, yeah. And then we went to Hanover Square when Danny had his own club, which became very grand and was
called Danny's?
Called Danny LaRue's.
Right. And David Frost came in and...
Yes, and David came in.
The business went to these shows.
The people who came in there, it's amazing. Princess Margaret and Lord Snowdon, as Tony Armstrong-Jones, as he then was, they used to come in, Richard Burton, Elizabeth Taylor, Noel Coward, Judy Garland. It was amazing, the people who came.
Really was the social thing at the time.
And it would tune you up, make you pretty nervous doing a show to... we did a Noel Coward finale with Noel Coward sitting 6 feet
Sitting
away.
in the audience.
And to see this man, you're having the effrontery to sing one of his songs into his face, and he's sitting as near as you are to me, Paul, at this moment, drawing on his Marlborough. And,
inscrutable.
Yes, inscrutable. And then came round afterwards to our communal dressing room. And I looked at my watch when he left. He stayed 2 3/4 hours. It wasn't a courtesy.
In the
call.
dressing room?
He sat on the table, dangling his
and just
feet,
talked?
And talked and made us laugh and remembered the whole show. And I'd parodied one of his songs. I'd stolen a song of his from a show called Ace of Clubs. And he suddenly said, who wrote that one at the beginning? And I thought, oh, God. I said, I did. And he patted me on the head and said, nearly as good as mine. Very gentle.
And then, as you say, that led directly, because as part of this social glitterati, in comes the current glittering glitterati, Mr. Frost.
Yes, David came in, and then he asked me to join the team on the Frost Report, which is where I met the whole of Monty Python, who weren't yet Monty Python.
So this extraordinary group of writers and performers came together under the aegis of David Frost. And by this time, Barry, you're a confirmed writer. You're not performing anymore.
Yes, my agent, Roger Hancock, Tony's brother, said, I don't want a writer who gets out of bed at midday with a head full of cotton wool, because I was working in a nightclub at night. So I gave that up and trusted Roger, and he never let me down. And I thought, take a deep breath and become a full-time writer.
And went on to write, having written for David and, of course, the Two Ronnies. I think, is it true? Can I just check with you, Barry, as the long-time producer of the Two Ronnies? Did you invent the news desk?
I think Jimmy Gilbert, at the time, James Gilbert, said, what are we going to do with these two? People come downstairs, people walk on, and blah, blah, blah. And I think I said news at 10, like two newsreaders at a table. But nobody said, what a brilliant idea. But that's what subsequently happened.
And yet for years afterwards...
Yes, I lay claim to it, and if anybody's listening to this who disputes it, please ring Paul Jackson.
Barry Crowther, who invented the news desk for the Two Ronnies. And I have to say, created a model that then, for years after, producers producing shows used to say, well, what can we do for the news items? How can we do... Yeah. Because it just was such a glorious
way. It became
an
absolute convention, didn't it?
Yeah.
Institution.
People trying to find different ways to do it and not obviously copy it. Barry, I asked for a list of those you had written for, on a regular basis, and I have to say it's 2 pages long. And the simplest thing is to say, I think it's anybody who's ever done a stand-up or sketch show on television in the last 30 years. So I won't read it out, but it is an extraordinary list.
We'd lose the will to live if you read it out.
Any particular favourites? What were the great relationships for you?
Oh, well, of course, having worked with Ronnie Corbett in nightclubs, and I met Ronnie Barker the year after I met Ronnie Corbett. They were friends of some years standing by the time I was writing for them and knowing them. So that was wonderful. Eric and Ernie, of course, although I always say... Eddie Braben was the A-team, the great Braben. Well, of course, you knew you were in safe hands writing for Eric and Ernie. You knew that whatever happened, it was going to come out good. The
chance it would be funny.
Oh, yes. And Kenny Everett. That was a wonderfully happy
Kenny, I want to come on to. But obviously the good ones, Barry. Without necessarily naming names, any bad experiences, any that you think I wouldn't go back there anymore?
Oh, yes.
Diplomatically stated. So you were in the 60s, as you say, absolutely connected, not only to this, if you like, maybe more traditional TV entertainment with the two Ronnies and so on, but absolutely working with Cleese, Chapman, Palin, Palin Jones and so on. How did that work? Did they see you as kind of an elder statesman in some way?
David had an amazing sort of, entrepreneurial quality, pulling people together. He's a sort of practising catalyst, and he gets everybody together. And he put me and Graham Chapman and Eric Idle together to write a sitcom for Ronnie Corbett. And this was absolutely fascinating because Graham and I discovered we've got exactly the same sense of humour, but totally different backgrounds. And we went on to write a lot of sitcoms and Doctor in the House, a television series. But that was David. He could see that Graham and I could work together. It was fascinating.
You've done a lot of your sitcom work, certainly, with partners, Barry. Do you find it better writing with a partner?
Oh, invariably work with a partner, yes, because if you're having the famous block, if it's not happening, if you're sitting alone in a room, it's murder. But if you're with somebody else, something will happen, you hope. You bat the ideas to and fro, and something will happen.
Now, it must have been full of challenges working with Graham, and extraordinary.
Oh, yes. I would go to his house in Highgate, Southwood Lane, and he would be pouring a small amount of tonic into a large vodka, 10:30 in the morning. And then we'd start writing, and about 12 o'clock he'd say, "Ooh, what about an early one?" And that was the day's shot.
That was it.
We went up to the Angel in Highgate, yes.
You got about an hour and a half in.
That was it, yeah. It was funny and sad as well, of course, because... But I admired him enormously, because when it became a real problem, he just stopped.
Now, I think one of these maybe slightly inebriated lunches led to a meeting with one of your lifelong heroes. Didn't Graham put you in touch or encouraged you to get in touch?
Oh, yes. I was a bit slow there, wasn't I? 'Cause wonderful feed, you ought to work for Oxfam. No, I was always going on about J.B. Priestley. And Graham said, "Oh, I'm so bored with you going on about J.B. Priestley. Why don't you ring him?" That was Graham's approach to life. Do it. And I said, "You can't ring somebody like J.B. Priestley." And he said, "Why not?" And then I thought, wait a minute. Wendy at Yorkshire Television has this magic phone book with all the names in. So I rang Wendy, and she said they'd done a documentary about him, and she gave me his phone number. Alveston, outside Stratford-on-Avon. So, suffused with this good lunch, I dialed this number, and a nice woman answered, and I said, "Is Mr. Priestley in?" And there was a click and silence, and I thought, "Hello?" I thought, oh my God, sobered up in about 10 seconds flat. And we started talking, and I said, "My name's Barry Cryer." He said, "Is it indeed?" Which I thought was fair enough. He said, "What are you ringing about?" And I said, "Well, my mate, Graham Chapman," and he actually said, "Monty Python," because he loved Monty Python. And then he said something that made me float on a pink cloud. He said, "I've heard you on the wireless." So I thought, oh my God, my idol's heard of me. So he said, "What are you on about?" So I said, "Well, I thought, what can I say that won't worry him? What's the most innocuous thing I can say?" I said, "We'd like to have tea with you." He said, "You're bloody mad." So I said, "Well, that's our problem." He said, "Well, where are you coming from for tea?" So I said, "London." He said, "Now I know you're mad." 3 o'clock Monday. All right. He said, "I want you to know I'm giving up my walk." So I hung up and got the address.
And formed what became for you a long friendship.
I took him to the Café Royal once. I thought that's his style. He'd never mentioned the Café Royal, but I thought that would be nice. And he had the long, you remember the old Sandeman Port adverts? He had his big wide-brimmed black hat and a sort of cloak on, looking amazing. And I was walking down Piccadilly and cutting through to Regent Street with this amazing legend, thinking, I could die tomorrow. Now I'm walking along with JB in the sunshine. And we went into the Café Royal. He said, "I haven't been here for 30 years. And an older waiter said, "Nice to see you again, Mr. Priestley."
So you talked earlier about Kenny Everett, which was obviously one of the uniquely successful shows, and you were a key worker. I think you and Kenny created that show together.
Well, Ray Cameron, who I worked with on Jokers Wild when I was a chairman with Comics Telling Jokes, he joined me full time, and we wrote the shows with a lot of input from Ev. That was a joyous period, really enjoyable on ITV and BBC.
Because they started at Thames.
We started at Thames, just recording all day in the studio with no audience at all.
Was that famous thing of the crew laughing, wasn't it?
Yes, and we wouldn't have insulted them by asking them to laugh. But on the other hand, it was the only TV show I've ever worked on where nobody ever said, "Quiet." You just carried on talking and chuckling and laughing and throwing Everett in front of the camera, and he'd always deliver something. It was a very happy time.
An inspired relationship. I mean, that was a really groundbreaking show,
Well, we used the technology. We were rather proud of that because there was a thing called, sorry, we won't get all technical, a thing called Quantel in those days. You remember when the pitch used to spin round and split up and go narrow and all over the place? People used it in music shows and things. I think we were the first, or one of the first shows to use it for comedy.
Yeah.
Kenny would be sitting on a sort of wooden block, a cube, and then stand up and hold up this cube. And it was actually the beginning of part 2 happening in front of your eyes on this big wooden square. We used to do all those sort of things. And
there were some taste and decency issues, obviously, always well.
Oh, yes, yes. I met Mary Whitehouse once, and I clasped her hand and said, thank you. And she looked bewildered, and I said, you made us. I work on the Kenny Everett Show. And her eyes became double glazed. She moved away. She suddenly spotted somebody on the other side of the room she wanted.
I tell you, yes, it really moved Pans people on by several degrees, I think, didn't it?
It was amazing publicity. But there was an incredible burst the first year of that show. It was winning stuff all over the place, and it was a very heady time because of the bands and the people we had on. People like Freddie Mercury and Rod Stewart and Cliff and all that. They came on we were the sort of follow-on touring version of Eric and Ernie because we had big people on and insulted them. We had Cliff with a white wig and lines all over his face and a beard wheeled past Everett while Everett was talking, and Everett looked and said, "Oh, it's Cliff going to make-up," which they were very happy for all this and having water poured all over them and everything. It was lovely.
And then you moved to the Beeb, where presumably there was no censorship. I mean, freedom ruled, obviously.
Yes, I can't say no. The one or two things we did at the Beeb that Thames had said we couldn't do. So
you brought the bag over with you, did
well
you?
done, Anne. It was a more solid setup insofar as it was Friday night recording. You know the routine, Paul, and it was a bit of a straitjacket for Ev, I think, because he wasn't a comic. He was Kenny Everett. But he reacted pretty well. He was terrified of a studio audience to start with, and then became very good at working with a studio audience, running about and mayhem.
Now, while all this was going on, as you say, you were finding an outlet for your performing, various outlets as a performer, but perhaps most famously in one of the all-time great radio shows. I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue. This was running really while you were doing the Everett shows. Let's just listen to a clip from Clue.
Our next rhyme is another new one and has been sent in by Mr. R.F. Preston of Leeds, which he assures me has helped alleviate the tedium of wet camping holidays in Scotland with his wife, and thought it might do the same for this programme. He writes, it's called Knights of the Round Table, and is based on words starting with the syllable sir, and that's spelled S-I-R-S-U-R or C-E-R. For example, the knight who was prone to running amok, circumstances beyond our control. 1 point to me, Samantha. Or the intriguing knight, surrounded in mystery. Okay, teams, any other...
Would it be possible as an alternative, we could all go on a wet camping holiday in Scotland with his wife?
I booked mine halfway through that last game. Any other suggestions? Teams?
Yes, indeed. I can give you one. The Night of Rupture, Sir Jekyll Appliance. And the Knight Who Likes a Pint, Sir Osis of the Liver. Sir Mon on the Mount. That's a night to remember.
Willie Rushton, of course, there.
Oh, well.
You subsequently went out on the road?
8 years we toured in the theatre. And
what was the show called?
The show was called Two Old Farts in the Night. It was Willie's idea, the title. He said, we can't get done under the Trade Descriptions Act. And which was true.
But you ended up playing in Wembley Arena or something, didn't you?
Well, Docklands Arena, we played to 10,000 people, yes.
So Baddiel and Newman's boast that they were the first arena comics. You've been there ages.
No. 10,000. And then we drove back into London, right slap into the poll tax riots. And Willie said, until just now, I thought 10,000 was our largest audience.
And in later years, Barry, if anything, I think your performing has taken off a bit. You've done a straight play, haven't you? You've done an Eightborn.
I did an Eightborn last year, yes. I got very frightened because I'm not used to learning lines, the basic discipline, you know, that actors and actresses do as a matter of course.
It's been said that there are only 7 jokes in the world. Have you used any of them today?
2.5. There aren't only 7 jokes in the world. I refute that. There may be 7 formulae.
Yeah.
Everything's recycled. You just change the name. In the 60s, I used to say about Harold Wilson, if he fell off a cliff, he'd swear he was going up. And I said it the other night about Bill Clinton, and it still works.
Thank you very much, Barry Cryer from me, Paul Jackson. Goodbye.
Thank you, Paul.
Evening at 7:30. Now, he may be a father figure of British jazz who's played with Louis Armstrong and even Radiohead, but to many people he's just that really funny bloke with the spot-on timing of I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue. Humphrey Lyttelton taught himself to play the trumpet, and he worked briefly in a Welsh steelworks when he left school, Eton in his case. His talent for broadcasting was first spotted back in 1947, and in October 1950 he was given his first programme looking at jazz. Well, here he is now, no jazz records, no silly things to do. In That Reminds Me.
Thank you. Right, where should we start? Some years ago, my band and I were doing a tour of the Middle East, and we went to Damascus, and we were absolutely enthralled. We landed in the middle of the desert in the airport. We went into Damascus, went round the ring road, which had every form of transport known to history going around it at the same time. And then we went in, and after we checked in the hotel, we went down to the souk, the oldest souk in history, and all the wonderful biblical associations, frankincense and myrrh and all that. We went up to a store where there was an Arab guy selling kind of Aladdin's lamps in all different metals, and he saw us coming, and he said, "Are you from England?" So he said, "Yes." And he said, "Nice to see you, nice." So I can't start with that, otherwise you might start shouting. The other way that I could start, because it's awkward to start a program called That Reminds Me, because you have to think of something to start right out of the blue, because it doesn't help you unless you say something to say that reminds me. You can't say that reminds me when you haven't said anything. So I'm going to go right back now to the earliest recorded words that I ever spoke. And as often happens, I remember vaguely the circumstances. I was 3 years old at the time, and I remember standing with my father at a bus stop, and I believe it was a bus stop leading to Slough, but I can't remember what happened there, or indeed why on earth we were going to Slough. But apparently what happened, because my father told me, was that a sleepy domestic cat came out of a gateway and walked towards us, blinking, sat down on the pavement, and then yawned, showing its teeth. And I flung my arms around my father's tree trunk of a leg and said, "Let's dead that cat before it eats us." As he blew the gaff on my early saying, I'm going to blow the gaff now on some of my own children's early sayings. Some of them were apprehensive, as children very often are. When my second son, David, was sitting with us watching Winston Churchill's funeral, he turned at one point and asked us, "Does everybody get killed when they get to 90? My daughter Georgina was once paddling in the water in Harlech Beach in North Wales, where we used to go and stay. And it's a long way from the sand dunes to the beach at low tide. And I thought that it was about time she came out. So I walked all the way down to the shore, and I said to her, "Georgina, come on out, because you're getting cold." She said, "No, I'm okay." I said, You're not okay, you're getting cold. You must come out now." She said, "I'm okay." I said, your teeth are chattering." And she said, "Only my teeth are cold." I live in a house called Allin Close, which has a shingles drive down to the roadway. My son Stephen, when he was about 11 years old, had a friend up to the house, and they'd got a couple of tennis rackets out, and they were picking pebbles up from the drive and swatting them into the air. And there's a row of trees that separates us from the road, and they were trying to get the stones over the trees. And many of the stones went over the trees, of course, and fell on motor cars travelling up Barnet Road on the other side. And a man absolutely puce in the face with rage came thundering up the drive, and he said to my son, "Are you belting stones?" And my son said, "No, Allin Close." In fact, I'm thinking of changing the name of the house to Belting. Sending out invitations, at home, Mr. and Mrs. Humphrey Lyttelton, Belting Stones, Hertfordshire. Sounds very posh. Later on in his life, my son Stephen was in charge of a record shop in Knightsbridge. And one Saturday morning, the doors burst open and some men came in. One of them produced a gun and told him and his friend, who was there as well, to lie down on the floor. And like all robbers, they came in shouting, "Get down on the floor, face down, get your hands away from me." And the guys shouted to his accomplice, "Go and get the money, go and get the money." The accomplice went straight to the till, opened it, and found £13.75 in it. So he said, "There's no money here, there's no money here." And the panic reigned, And so the guy jabbed my son in the back of the neck and said, "Where's the money? Where's the money?" My son said, "There isn't any money here. I banked it yesterday evening." And the guy said, "What do you want to do that for?" And my son said, "I didn't know you were coming." Most children are eccentrics. They haven't learned how to conform to things. But my family is fairly rich in eccentrics of all ages and has been in the past. My great-uncle Albert was quite a renowned Victorian eccentric. And of course, the thing about eccentrics is that they're not, as many people think today, like exhibitionists. They don't know what they're doing. They suffer from an excess of common sense. He was appointed Bishop of Pretoria, and before he left for Africa, his sister thought that she ought to give him a send-off. So she insisted, although he hated music, on having a musical evening. And what's more, she insisted that as the guest of honour, he should sit up near the front as this lady and the piano player performed. And he put up with a song and a half, I think, and then got up and blundered out of the room. As he passed his sister, she said, "Where are you going, Albert?" He said, "Africa." I've been quite interested throughout my life in eccentricity of all kinds, and I've noticed that some of the strongest areas of eccentricity are the classroom and the barrack square, because I believe that people who are even briefly put in complete charge of a group of their fellow human beings go ever so slightly mad, some madder than others. I would say one of my favourite schoolmasters was a man called Monty Evans, who was half Welsh and half French, and he'd inherited from both sides a sudden flamboyant character. He looked a bit like the actor Emlyn Williams. With his gown on, it looked like a cape, and he had grey hair flowing back, and he spoke in very flowery language. When he used to set some homework, he used to correct it at home, and then he'd come in to the class and hand it round, telling the boys their results. And he handed it round with a certain amount of florid language. He would say, for example, "Wilkinson, I've awarded you an A+, a feat as surprising and miraculous as one of those of Hercules himself." And it was all that kind of thing. And he got to me, and in a voice as portentous and doom-laden as that of John Humphrey's on the Today programme, he said, "Lyttelton, D-. If this was Russia, you'd be found in the river in the morning, headless and floating downstream." That was the best ticking off I think I've ever had. Drill sergeants on parade. I saw enough of them in World War I, because I went, World War II, sorry. I saw a few in World War I as well, but I don't remember them so well. When I joined up in the army, I went to Caterham Barracks. I was in the Grenadier Guards, and I went first as a recruit, and then later on I returned there as an officer. So I had plenty of time to see what went on the barrack square. And I was amazed at the lunacy of drill sergeants. If they're really listening now, I know that off the parade ground, you're extremely balanced and sensible people. On the parade ground, different story. There used to be one guy who was actually one of the best of the bunch when I was a recruit there, who, I don't remember his name, and anyway, he might be still alive and be offended, so if you're listening, it wasn't you. And he was very mild compared to the others. He'd take you through rifle drill in a quiet and regular voice, and at the end of it he'd say, "Do you understand?" And we'd all nod and say, "Yes, Sergeant," at which point he went totally pear-shaped. He'd repeat those words, but at the top of his voice, "Do you understand?" And the first thing that happened, his cap used to fly off. Veins stood out on his neck. His face went a sort of deep maroon colour and shuddered. The whole of his body shook. And I swear that he shuffled his feet so rapidly that he levitated 2 or 3 inches off the parade ground floor. When I went then, after I'd been there as a recruit, when I went to Sandhurst, there was another sergeant there who was positively a sadist, because we used to drill several squads on this huge barrack square. And in the army, as you know, what the officers do, they perform an essential function on those occasions, in that they walk about. And that's about all. Just to sort of generally see that everything's going all right. And at Sandhurst, it was the adjutant who used to walk about, and he used to walk about on a horse. Well, he didn't, he sat on the horse. The horse walked about, doing what, from my observation, every horse does when it feels itself in the public eye, something which would be better done in the privacy of its own stable. And this sergeant of mine used to keep his eye open, and when he spotted a steaming mound somewhere on the parade ground, he marched us off, pointing us straight at this thing, and as we walked over it, he shouted, "Mark time." So they were left, right, left. Oh, it was terrible. Draw a veil over that. I seem to have strayed into slightly indelicate regions, so I'm going to tell you another one now, the main virtue of which is that it's absolutely true. The scene was at the Wellington Barracks, Birdcage Walk, 6:30 in the morning, daylight. And the regimental sergeant major emerged from his quarters, as he always did, to go on a round of inspection before the general parade started, which was around about 7:15. And he used to walk across with his pay stick, which was a thing that you probably know, that sort of opened up like schoolboy compasses. And if it was manipulated properly from the wrists, it would measure the exact regulation distance that the pace should be when members of the Grenadier Guards were marching. And when the pay stick was folded up there, it was a kind of insignia of office. They used to walk about with it under his arm. And he walked across the barrack square, and in the middle of it, he was brought to a halt by the sight of something which is, I don't know whether it is still now, but in those days was euphemistically referred to as a nuisance, bang in the middle of the barrack square. And in fact, committing a nuisance anywhere in public was regarded as a very serious offence. So he hurried off to the barrack rooms, and goodness knows by what form of detection, he found a culprit. And the culprit was wheeled in front of the commanding officer at commanding officer's orders next day, when the commanding officer would sit at a table, and he dispensed justice while all the junior officers, myself included, used to line up behind him looking stern. And the man was marched in and stood in front of the commanding officer, and then the regimental sergeant major read out the charge, which was that at some unspecified time of the night, this guardsman so-and-so had committed a nuisance in the middle of the barrack square. So the commanding officer said, "What have you got to say?" And he said, "I'd been out to a public house the night before, and I must have had something funny in the beer or something or other, because when I walked across the square, I was suddenly taken short." And immediately the regimental sergeant major shouted, "Need to speak, sir." "Yes, sergeant major." On arrival at the scene, I examined the nuisance with my pay stick and found it was hard and obviously made with a Hefford. Reminds me of another occasion on which a euphemism got somebody into trouble, because my father had a great interest in murder trials. It may have been a slightly unhealthy interest in murder trials. But the euphemisms bit was in a police report that my father so tickled him, because he had a macabre sense of humour, that he cut it out and stuck it in a commonplace book where he kept a whole lot of things that amused him and interested him. And it was from the 1930s, and it's a bit gruesome. It was about a young woman who had been murdered, and the police report said, because in those days, of course, the word rape was never, ever used, so euphemisms were called upon, and the report said, the young woman had been stabbed 13 times, decapitated, dismembered, but not interfered with. That reminded me, for some unknown reason, about the sort of things that people come up and say to you. A young man came up to me at a gig not so very long ago, and he said, I've never seen you live before. He said, I've listened to all your broadcasts, but I've never seen you in the flesh. And he said, I'll tell you something, your voice is far more recognizable now that I've heard it. And I've always noticed when people say things like that, they walk away, and there's then a little falter as it suddenly dawns on them that they've made a complete prat of themselves. A lady came up to me in a foyer, came right up to me, stared me in the face and said, if you look as well as you play, you've got nothing to worry about. Somebody came up, a not very friendly chap came up, because I played two instruments, sometimes three. Played trumpet and then a bit of clarinet and sometimes tenor horn. It must have been on an occasion when I played all three, because he came up and he said, Do you play more than one instrument to show off your virility? It might seem unusual to you, who know my persona as chairman of I'm Sorry, I Haven't a Clue, that I'm quite interested in insults. And I've made a little bit of a collection of them. One of my favourites is one of the more long-winded of insults. And it was when a quite renowned American senator called Chauncey Depew, renowned as much as anything else for dropping bricks and for having put-downs, he was at a dinner party, large man, huge man, and he was in a dinner party also attended by President William Taft, who was another large man. And in the course of the meal, no doubt when the conversation had lapsed, Chauncey Depew said in a loud voice, looking down at President Taft's midriff, "Mr. President, I hope when the baby is born that you will have the grace to name it after your lady wife," which is pretty rude when you come to think about it. President Taft said, "Senator, by all means, if the baby is a girl, I will name it after my beloved helpmate of many years. If it's a boy, I shall exercise a father's prerogative and call it Junior. But if, as I suspect, it's no more than a bag of wind, I shall call it Chauncey Depew." I like circular conversations, things that just go round and round and round. Well, I had a circular conversation with an old man on a roundabout outside Bradford. I went around the roundabout a couple of times, and then there was spotted one elderly man, an angry, waspish-looking man with those sort of metal-rimmed glasses like John Lennon used to wear, and a flat hat. I wound down the window, and I said, "Can you tell me the way to the university, please?" "What university?" So I said, "Bradford University." "There isn't one." I said, "Bradford University." "There isn't one." I said, "There must be one." I was getting a bit ratty myself. I said, "There must be one. I'm going to hear a concert there." "Well, where is it then?" Oh, I must tell you this one, because I got involved many years ago in a sort of do for a magazine called Lilliput magazine, which was a kind of pocket magazine. And they got us all round a table for lunch in a big restaurant. Quite a range of people were there. There was Cecil Beaton, the photographer. Cecil Beaton was what my mother used to call, another euphemism coming up, an exquisite, in the sense that he was very refined and beautifully dressed all the time and spoke in a very gentle voice. And next to him was sitting Hannon Swaffer, who looked like an unmade bed, wearing a black suit, which I thought rather overdone pinstripe, until I got closer and discovered it was dandruff. And Cecil Beaton had on an Edwardian suit, which was very fashionable at the time. I think he may have started the fashion in society, but of course the fashion filtered down to the lower elements of the population and was adopted by teddy boys. And while Cecil Beaton was having a conversation with somebody else, Nancy Spain leant over to me and she said, "Have you heard about Cecil?" I said, "What?" She said, "He was walking down Piccadilly the other day and 3 or 4 teddy boys came running past him, and as they passed him they said, 'It's the Elephant and Castle tonight, and it's razors.'" Right, we're warming up now. We should be going full steam ahead by about 3 o'clock. I must tell you, the best opening of an article that I ever read in my life was written by Robert Benchley, who used to write humorous articles in The New Yorker. And one of them started, "Does the average man get enough sleep? What is enough sleep? What is the average man? What is does?" When I came out of the army, which was in 1946, I went to university, or my particular university, which was a small nightclub in Regent Street called the Nut House. And I used to go down in my army uniform straight after the last parade, and I'd turn up at the Nut House. And some friends that were with me, you know, about the second time, they said, "Take your trumpet down there and play." And there's a certain look that used to come across musicians' faces when somebody wearing a uniform of the Brigade of Guards came up and asked them if they could play. Because this particular band was led by a man called Carlo Kramer. And he told me, when I said to him, "Why did you look so horrified when I came and asked you if I could sit in?" And he said, "Well, we had a colleague of yours from the Irish Guards
who came here and sat in the other day, and he thought he was Gene Krupa, which he wasn't. And as part of his hopeless performance, he used to throw the sticks up in the air. But never accurately enough to catch them, or even... they'd land all over the room in people's drinks and everything. So, but anyway, I'm very lucky because I've had a jazz program for 30-odd years. And I've toured with a lot of, I've been very lucky. I do regular shows with Helen Shapiro, who's now a fine jazz singer. I've done shows with another American singer, Lillian Boutté. I've done shows with another fine British singer, who's unfortunately not too well now, Maxine Daniels. So I've been very lucky. For somebody, I may say, who was famous in my early days when I started up as not liking vocalists. George Melly always tells the story that when he used to come down to 100 Oxford Street, the club I had back in the 1950s, he several times came up and asked if he could sing. And I said, well, in slightly longer words, I said no. And then one day he noticed that I play the trumpet, or did in those days, with my eyes shut. So he used to dance, he used to run around. I used to call him Bunny Bum because he used to hop around like a little rabbit at a wider and wider orbit until he got near enough to the stand and noticed that I had my eyes shut. So he hopped onto the bandstand and started singing Dr. Jazz. Hello, Central Guy. Nearly had a heart attack. Shook me rigid. We started recording, I'm sorry, I haven't a clue, in 1972, believe it or not. And a whole lot of people were in it. John Cleese was in it for a little while, but he didn't like to sing. And all sorts of nice people were in it. But eventually it sort of solidified into the regulars who were on for years and years and years. That's Tim Brooke-Taylor, Barry Cryer, Graham Garden, and dear old Willie Rushton. It was very difficult to replace Willie. And I think a lot of the people who've come and done it since, if any one of them had been booked as a replacement to him to be on it all the time, they'd have felt a bit uncomfortable. Because one of the great things about the Sorry I Haven't a Clue show is that all the time the four people we've had on the teams have had their own individuality. Barry Cryer, for example, who's had a career not only as a comic scriptwriter but also as a stand-up comedian, he's the one on the panel who could bring up a gag for every occasion, not only during the show, but in the dressing room before and in the green room afterwards, on the bus, I think. And I hope Barry was going to be here today, but he couldn't make it, because I thought it would be nice to hear that laugh, which I once described as like a chicken trying to lay a rugby football. Willie had his own, his was the most satirical contribution always. And then Tim Brooke-Taylor was the darling of all the girls because they thought that I bullied him as a chairman. And Graham Garden just sits there with that sort of mandarin smile on his face and waits for just the right moment and then comes in with a devastating punchline. So that's been the strength of it all the way through. And the best thing that was ever said about me in a review, best review I ever had, when it referred to me as the soporific chairman. And I prefer to just sit and enjoy what's going on. There's no point in me chipping in. In fact, when I started doing a pilot show in, would you believe, November 1971. And everybody came away from it saying, never again. It was a dreadful experience because it wasn't very good. I thought then that it would never go on the air because anybody who ever did any broadcasting would always be asked to come in and do a pilot show. And 99% of them disappeared down the plug hole and never went on the air. So I was confident that this one wouldn't. And then, of course, a month or two later, a message came down from above saying we want to run it as a regular feature. I then had the problem of thinking, how am I going to represent myself on the program? Because I can't chip in with all these four comedians on the program. And so it occurred to me just to do on the program what I felt like as I drove in the first time we did it, which was to think, I've got a perfectly good career of my own. What the hell am I doing going into it? And that's really been in the back of my mind ever since, as you probably noticed. But we've had some, we had some very distinguished people on. We had a pro-celebrity version of Mornington Crescent one time, when we had one of the great knights of the British theatre, the English theatre, as the celebrity guest. And the audience were marvellous because they all whistled and cheered and yelled. And he sat down there, and I explained to him in very deferential language exactly what we were going to do. We were going to play an ordinary round of the game so as to remind him of the rules. Then he would join us for another game. So we did an ordinary round. He went round and round and round, and somebody said Mornington Crescent. So then I said, now, sir, if you would take your place, and if you'd be after Willie Rushton, we'd go all the way around the team, and then you'll be after Willie Rushton. So it started with Tim Brooke-Taylor and went all the way around to Willie Rushton, who said Mornington Crescent. So I then had to apologise, obviously, profusely to this actor, which I did, and I said, that's the way things go, you know, it's that sort of a game, you know, everybody takes their chance, and Marv, you've been a tremendous sport, sir, and now, if you'd like to go back to your seat. So he went back to his seat to more applause from the audience, and I never once mentioned his name, and there was a reason for that, because he wasn't there. There wasn't anybody there. It was all, I was talking to an empty chair. But because he was very gracious, he didn't erupt like Ralph Richardson or become a bit theatrical like Laurence Olivier. He just maintained a dignified silence, as somebody who isn't there would. And people wrote in saying, to the BBC, several personal letters to me saying, what a disgraceful way to treat one of our most distinguished actors. And they wrote to the chairman and the director general and everybody concerned. And they all thought it was Sir Alec Guinness. Isn't that fascinating, about the effect of radio? People, they all had a name for it. I got ticked off. Mrs. Thatcher took part in one, and she didn't quite get the hang of it because she spent the whole time, the game of Mornington Crescent went round and round and round. And as you know, it's a very complicated game, which is based on London street names and underground stations and so on. And all she said all the way through was, Huddersfield, because that's the only bit of tape they had. I've enjoyed it. Hope you have. Been a lovely audience.
We have completely run out of time. Good riddance.